Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal Venerable. See playlist for other chapters and novels. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 781, An Invincible Opponent. Even though he had received the praise of the Emperor of York Divine Kingdom, Logan could only smile before asking, who else wants to challenge me? Ever since Logan first wielded his space-chopping sword, 2 people already had their arms chopped off. The initial excitement of the virtual tribulation realm martial artists disappeared and the crowd turned silent. It wasn't that they lacked self-confidence. Out of all the martial artists of the Divine Kingdoms who could stand on the first tier, which one of them wasn't an outstanding character of their respective martial house? If they didn't have absolute confidence in themselves, they wouldn't be able to stand on the first tier. However, Logan was just too outstanding, causing the talents on the first tier to hesitate. It would have been fine if they won, but what if they lost? They still had to head toward the Feather Holy See. Losing arms wasn't a big problem, but they wouldn't be able to return to peak condition in a short period, so it would be quite a burden along the journey. In the very beginning, the match had only been held for entertainment before entering the Feather Holy See. But after many years of evolution, it had slowly turned into a battle among the young warriors of the 4 Divine Kingdoms, giving them a chance to show off their strength. Even so, compared to exploring the secret lands within the Feather Holy See, it wasn't all that important. With that, many of the first-tier talents began to retreat. What they didn't know was that the Imperial members on the stairs were beginning to get angry. Although the Soul Sea Realm Masters kept quiet, they were inwardly unhappy with Logan and War Emperor York. Once again, the Starfield Divine Kingdom was defeated. This time, it was the Wind and Harlan Divine Kingdom's turn. The Emperor of the Wind Divine Kingdom didn't say a word, nor did the Crown Prince and the other princes behind him. Turner, the Emperor of Harlan Divine Kingdom, scanned over Randy and the Crown Prince Bram, his eyes flashing. Even in his silence, his gaze told them everything. Under such a gaze, Randy felt his heart heat up in nervousness. Just as he was about to recommend Zen, Bram was already one step ahead. In a clear voice, he said, "Edwin Shao will fight on my behalf." Randy's gaze turned cold at his words, but he remained silent. "Since you're determined to make a comeback, just do it. Edwin is your last chess piece. If he's defeated or even loses an arm, it will be a huge blow to your team. You'll face many difficulties exploring the secret lands. Let's see if you will fight personally after Edwin loses," Randy thought to himself. Indeed, Bram was rather anxious. He spoke highly of Edwin and Gregory, and he wanted to prove himself in front of Turner. He wanted to prove that he had good judgment and skill in controlling others. But Gregory let him down, having been so easily defeated in battle. Now, Edwin was the only one he could place his hopes on. The Dark Martial House was the largest martial house in the entire Harlan Divine Kingdom. Although it was considered a 6th-grade force like the Jade Martial House, the latter could only be ranked 2nd. Because Edwin was the strongest in the Dark Martial House, the Crown Prince, along with many of the Harlan Divine Kingdom's martial artists, had high hopes for him in the coming fight. Hearing the Crown Prince's declaration, Edwin leapt up and cupped his hands toward the prince and the emperor before pulling out a spear from his space ring. It's a top-grade sacred weapon. The martial artists from the Harlan Divine Kingdom are enviable. Those who have reached the virtual tribulation realm can obtain top-grade sacred weapons. I'm green with envy. Well, as you know, the Harlan Divine Kingdom has a plethora of weapon refiners. Most of the sacred weapons in the Divine Kingdoms are made by them. Similarly, the Wind Divine Kingdom has an abundance of alchemists, and the York Divine Kingdom has many runic experts. It was undeniable that the Harlan Divine Kingdom's refining techniques were the most famous and, more importantly, weapon refinement was a tradition within Edwin's family. Even so, top-grade sacred weapons were still very rare. In any other situation, Edwin wouldn't have such a sacred weapon with him. But because exploring the secret land of the Feather Holy See was a huge deal for his future, his family had provided him with such a top-grade sacred weapon. Crack! To everyone's surprise, the spear seemed to be extremely flexible. As Edwin brandished it hard, it was like a whip smashing into the air, creating a deafening explosion. Edwin's gaze was ice cold as he stared at Logan. This time, Logan raised his open palm facing him. 5 strikes. I only need 5 strikes to defeat you. With a cold snort, Edwin returned, cut the garbage. Don't make the fight child's play. I don't care how many strikes you need. Victory or defeat will be decided soon. Hearing Edwin's statement, Logan smiled mischievously. This opponent isn't bad. It seems I need to be more serious. What does that mean? Didn't he already go all out? I don't believe that. He's so pretentious. He defeated Gregory with 3 strikes and Willard with 4. Maybe he really didn't use his full strength. Except for those of the York Divine Kingdom, other martial artists seemed to have the same hatred for a single enemy. Logan was just too arrogant. Still, he had the right to be arrogant as his strength was immeasurably strong. So far, no one had even touched him. This time around, it was still Logan who took the initiative to launch the first attack. His body became as fast as a shuttle, piercing through space as he brandished the deadly space-chopping sword in his hand once again. With a cold snort, Edwin held the long spear in his hand as it coiled around his limb like a snake. The speed of Logan's space-chopping sword was extremely fast, but after Edwin coiled his spear, it immediately began to shake and fly out. It was as fast as lightning, charging toward Logan. Before its tip stabbed at Logan, the flexible, long spear circled the space-chopping sword before moving forward and stabbing right at Logan's face. Not only did Edwin's spear seal Logan's space-chopping sword, it also wanted to kill him. Logan's space-chopping sword was undoubtedly sharp, and an ordinary sacred weapon wouldn't be able to resist it. However, Edwin's spear was a top-grade sacred weapon. It was also flexible. As it twined around the sword, the weapon was sealed to the point of immobility. Whoosh! The tip of the spear was like the head of a venomous snake, going straight for Logan's face. When Logan slightly tilted his head, the tip of the spear brushed past his ear. But the spear seemed to have a will of its own. As soon as it missed, it twisted again and went for the back of Logan's head. Putting on a faint smile, Logan loosened his grip on the sword. Suddenly, he sank just as his sword disappeared. Being a space-made weapon, even if it disappeared, Logan could remake it in an instant. In just one strike, Edwin had forced Logan to give up his weapon and choose to retreat. With that, it had to be considered the best result so far. The crowd from the Dark Martial House immediately sighed in relief. Perhaps, in their hearts, the younger generation of the Harlan Divine Kingdom had no way to defeat Logan. The fact that Edwin forced him to retreat like that saved some face for them. However, Bram and Turner didn't agree. For the dignified Harlan Divine Kingdom to be unable to find anyone to confront Logan, it was something they wouldn't ever be able to accept. Although the kingdom had been rather weak over the years, they weren't weak to such extent. Bram's eyes darkened at the thought. He already began putting together plans in his mind. If Edwin really lost, he might even make it on stage to crush Logan. As the crown prince of the Harlan Divine Kingdom, he had the obligation to protect the dignity of his kingdom. Although it would be shameful for him to fight in person as the prince, he couldn't care less about that fact at the moment. Lowering his body, Logan pulled back to put some distance between him and his opponent. With a wave of his hand, another space-chopping sword appeared in his hold. Not bad. You remind me that I should be a little more serious. Logan pointed his sword straight at Edwin. Cut the garbage. Holding his spear with one hand and pressing the spear's body with the other, he swept his fingers along the spear. Hiss. Then, he lifted his spear. The weapon seemed to have a mind of its own as it turned into a snake, coiling around Edwin, with its tip pointing right at Logan. A smile hung on Logan's lips as he gently waved the space-chopping sword in his hand. In the next moment, he struck a second time. After Edwin activated the spirit of the spear, it was like a beast with a keen sense of smell, attacking Logan the moment he got close. Tinkle. The tip of the spear pierced Logan's body, but just then, the space armor covered his body once again. With that defense, the spear only left a deep mark on his space armor. It couldn't completely penetrate it. Rather, it was impossible to break through in a single strike. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the Harlan Divine Kingdom's martial artists seemed to turn grim. Originally, everyone was sure that Logan would be unable to condense the space armor after he had condensed the space-chopping sword. Presumably, he just believed it to be unnecessary. But this fellow possessed invulnerable space armor, as well as the space-chopping sword that could slice through anything in its path. How could they hope to defeat him? It was no exaggeration to say that their odds were slim to none. Just as they all thought, Logan, whose attitude began to take a serious turn, simply gave up on dodging and defense, allowing Edwin's long spear to pierce him. Meanwhile, the space-chopping sword in his hand continued to slide into space and slash at Edwin. A third strike, a fourth strike, and then a fifth strike. After the fifth strike, Logan slid to the side. With a spray of blood in the air, another arm fell from the sky. The Crown Prince's gaze flickered unsteadily. Disappointment was evident in his eyes as his brows creased. What should he do? Was he really going to fight on his own? At that moment, his gaze suddenly landed on a somewhat skinny figure on the square. It was Zen, with his eyes fixed on the battle. Chapter 782. Zen's turn to fight. After Edwin was defeated, except for Lord Randy and the Crown Prince himself, not a single powerful martial artist was present to grace the history of Harlan Divine Kingdom. The first tier of the Divine Kingdom continent was composed of the most outstanding divine-level talents. Such talented people were extremely rare, and people who could match the best of them were impossible to find. There was a huge gap between the strength of the first tier and the second tier. Even the most powerful martial artists of the second tier itself would be instantly killed by Logan alone, so it was useless to dispatch them. The Crown Prince, who went by the name Bram, had never witnessed Zen's strength. Back when the latter had passed the examination of the Jade Martial House, Bram was not present, but Gregory had personally informed him that an independent warrior who had appeared in the Martial House possessed the qualification to be ranked at the first tier. This was a highly improbable truth, and the Crown Prince's curiosity was aroused. Without doubt, he was in dire need of such a talent, so he rushed to Crane City. At that time, he had thought that it would be easy to win over Zen since Gregory had told him that Randy had already become enemies with Zen. However, he did not expect Randy to break in. Judging from Gregory's description, Bram only had a rough estimate of Zen's strength. He was probably almost on a par with Gregory, maybe even a bit stronger. Even if he fought, he probably wouldn't be Logan's match. However, this wasn't the crux of the problem. The key was, would Zen listen to his orders? What if he asked Zen to fight and Zen refused? What would he do then? When Randy saw the Crown Prince lost in thought, a sneer rose from the corner of his mouth. He knew that it was time for him to stand out. The Harlan Divine Kingdom had just lost, and now it was time for Wind Divine Kingdom and Starfield Divine Kingdom to dispatch their martial artists. Whether or not they could challenge Logan, Randy would definitely dispatch Zen. The two sons of Turner were lost in their own thoughts, but more importantly, everyone's attention at the moment was focused on the Wind Divine Kingdom and the Starfield Divine Kingdom. War King Wind was wearing a huge cloak and standing on the platform at the top of the stairs. His cloak was fluttering in the wind. Till now, the Wind Divine Kingdom had not sent in a single martial artist. And from the looks of things, it seemed that War King Wind did not plan to send any martial artist to challenge Logan. Thus, everyone could sense that it was Starfield Divine Kingdom's turn now. Scott, the ruler of the Starfield Divine Kingdom, chuckled slightly. Looks like our kingdom's youths aren't strong enough to win this fight. Is there someone you would like to recommend? He turned around and asked the Crown Prince as well as the other princes. In fact, as the ruler of the Starfield Divine Kingdom, he knew very well how many top-grade martial artists he had under his control. However, according to traditional practice, the ruler himself would never recommend anyone. After all, if the candidate he recommended was defeated in battle, he would be humiliated. Your Majesty, I am willing to represent our kingdom in battle. I request to fight. Count me in. The Starfield Divine Kingdom was the second strongest among the 4 divine kingdoms. There were numerous martial artists in its arsenal, and many of them were sure of themselves. Therefore, when their ruler needed them to fight, they actively volunteered themselves. Horus, the Crown Prince of the Starfield Divine Kingdom, swept over his team before his sight finally focused itself on Jeremy. He indifferently ordered, "Jeremy Zhao, you will fight for me." He was very unhappy at the moment. How could his kingdom be suppressed by Logan from the York Divine Kingdom? Was the latter really invincible among virtual Tribulation Realm martial artists? This gave him no balm. However, the sword in Logan's hand told him exactly what the cruel reality was and just how bloody it was. Jeremy Zhao had performed slightly better than Edwin of the Harlan Divine Kingdom, but he had only withstood 7 strikes from Logan. After 7 strikes, Jeremy also had lost an arm and dejectedly left the arena. The somber expression of War Emperor York finally relaxed. He suddenly tilted his head and smiled at Turner. I wonder if anyone else from your kingdom can fight. There were no more than 20 to 30 martial artists from the 4 divine kingdoms who were able to stand in the first tier. Everyone had a list of their names. War Emperor York knew that the Harlan Divine Kingdom only had 2 virtual Tribulation Realm martial artists, Gregory and Edwin. Since the 2 had already been defeated, the royal family members themselves would have to fight now. It was very likely that the Crown Prince would have to personally fight Logan. At his words, Turner's lips hardened and an angry mask shadowed his face. He thought to himself, this is too much. He obviously knows the answer, but he asked that question deliberately to humiliate me. He's giving me a hard time. This match was just a review before the exploration of secret lands. It was like an appetizer. The words of War Emperor York were a bit too much. The anger on Turner's face disappeared. War Emperor York was right. He really didn't have any good ideas. Was he really going to let the Crown Prince fight? It was feasible, but even if the Crown Prince won, it wouldn't be something honorable. Losing would be even more humiliating. If he was defeated, then what qualifications would he have left to be allowed to succeed the throne? Therefore, Turner had to think prudently before he appointed the Crown Prince to fight. Just then, the Holy Maiden of the York Divine Kingdom twisted her body and walked to her emperor. She giggled and giddily asked, as far as I know, only Edwin and Gregory of the Harlan Divine Kingdom are qualified, barely. Now that their arms have been cut off by Logan, who is going to fight next? Is it Lord Randy, or the Crown Prince himself? At her words, Bram's face flashed with hostility. In addition to the royal family, there was also a large secret sect in the York Divine Kingdom. The Holy Maiden was the most important person in the sect, and her status was as high as that of the Crown Prince in the York Divine Kingdom. Sometimes what she said was even more useful than the words of the Crown Prince himself. After all, if the Crown Prince wanted to ascend to the throne, he would first have to wait for his father to abdicate himself, or worse yet, die. Moreover, he had to step into the Soul Sea realm before he was allowed to take on the throne. It would take thousands or even 10,000 years before his father abdicated, and it was very difficult for him to reach the Soul Sea realm. However, if a woman was chosen to be a holy maiden by the secret sect, she would be able to command the secret sect of the York Divine Kingdom and would possess an extraordinary status. Bram smiled coldly and once again looked at Zen. Although he didn't believe that Zen could defeat Logan, he didn't want anyone to think that there was no powerful martial artist in his kingdom either. Who said that no one in my kingdom can fight? Bram suddenly asked coldly. He then turned his head and told Zen, who was standing in the square, Thad Luo, fight for me. When Zen suddenly heard Bram call out his name, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. His gaze landed on Randy. Randy slightly shook his head while Zen slightly nodded his head but did not reply. Lots of martial artists were standing in the square. They had never heard of this name, so they didn't know who the Crown Prince was calling out. Moreover, no one replied, making them feel even weirder. What was the prince doing? Who was Thad Luo? Was he a newly born talent of the Harlan Divine Kingdom? Regardless of who this person was, why hadn't he stepped up? Could it be that even the Crown Prince couldn't order him about? When Bram saw Zen standing there without showing any intentions of moving, his face flashed with a dark red color, and his eyes got filled with anger. He had just given Zen a chance to show off his strength, but Zen hadn't responded. How arrogant he was. The three Soul Sea Realm Masters from the Jade Martial House knew what was going on since they were standing on the steps and could see into the crowd. They were well aware of Thad's character and also knew that both the Crown Prince and Randy had tried to win over him, and the Crown Prince had failed. Turner was also confused. No one had given him any information about Thad. He asked in confusion, Bram, who is Thad Luo? Bram was about to speak, but Randy answered first. He knew that it was time for him to speak. Father, Thad is my friend. He's a new talent in the Jade Martial House. He is not the slightest bit weaker than Gregory or Edwin. Even I'm unable to defeat him. Oh, Turner's face lit up. Really, it's absolutely true. I'll invite him to fight now. Randy glanced at Bram with a smile on his face. He then turned towards Zen and asked in a clear voice, My dear brother Thad, I'll leave this fight to you. Everyone who was present there looked at each other in puzzlement. Generally speaking, the status of martial artists was decided by their strength, but the strength of the royal family was a different story. After all, the large divine kingdom had to ensure its own dignity. How could Randy call an ordinary martial artist brother? Even the Crown Prince had called Thad by his full name. This was why Turner's face showed a hint of displeasure at the sentence, but he didn't say anything. Zen put on a smile. Actually, when he had seen Logan display his skills, he knew that he would have to fight him sooner or later. With a light flash, he suddenly jumped out from the crowd and slowly floated towards the sky. He's just a martial artist at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm. Interesting. Doesn't the Harlan Divine Kingdom have some other stronger martial artists to fight for itself? I think they do. Look, there is still a large group of people below there who are at the later stage of the virtual tribulation realm. They all must be stronger than this guy. He's just entered the middle stage of this realm. I've never heard of him before. Where is he from? Lord Randy is a man of sagacity. Since he believes that this person is strong enough, I'm sure he really has some skills. So what? Compared to all virtual tribulation realm martial artists, Logan is basically invincible. What can this guy do? After all, this Thad is only at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm. I bet he can't take even a single blow from Logan. When the martial artists on the square saw that Zen was just at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm, they began to discuss among themselves animatedly. They all thought that the Harlan Divine Kingdom didn't have any stronger martial artists, so Zen had been dispatched. At this moment, many of the powerful martial artists at the Soul Sea realm also had weird looks on their faces. The Crown Prince had recommended Zen, but Zen hadn't responded. After Randy had successfully invited Zen, Turner had an expectant look on his face. But once he realized that Zen had just reached the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm, he was quite disappointed. The Holy Maiden of the York Divine Kingdom was staring at Zen with a puzzled expression too. Chapter 783. You are Zen Luo. The Holy Maiden of the York Divine Kingdom was named Marine Bai. The Bai clan was a relatively unknown clan in the York Divine Kingdom, but ever since Marine Bai was born and had been chosen as the Holy Maiden of the secret sect, they had risen to fame. Back then, Daniel Liu, the Prince of the York Divine Kingdom, whose talent was ranked 9th within the Divine Kingdom, had obtained an enchanted lamp from the Celestial Tomb. The lamp was something that a commoner had given to him. It was said that there existed a total of 9 enchanted lamps in the entire world. Once all of them were lighted, those who held them would be able to enter the Celestial Tomb. Despite waiting for so many years, Daniel Liu had never seen the passageway to the Celestial Tomb activated. Through time, even Marine Bai had started being curious about it. On the 3rd day of the 3rd month every year, she and Daniel Liu would light the lamp together. At first, they were hopeful, but as time passed, their faith waned. She never imagined that a passageway would actually appear. Due to the two of them not having expected what happened, they weren't prepared at all. Because of that, they hurriedly invited a few guards at the life and death realm to enter the Celestial Tomb with them. Who would have thought that Daniel Liu's life would be taken away during that trip to the Celestial Tomb? This matter caused a great stir within the York Divine Kingdom. After all, a prince had died. Even though War Emperor York had many sons and daughters, Daniel Liu's talent was still ranked 9th out of the entire York Divine Kingdom. He could be easily considered as one of the most outstanding princes in the Divine Kingdom. What made the whole thing worse was how a nobody from the Sky Northern region actually dared to go against the York Divine Kingdom. Any mighty warrior at the Soul Sea realm from the York Divine Kingdom could charge through the chaotic ocean of stars and easily flatten the entire Sky Northern region. But what Marine Bai did next was arrange for Master Wallace to contact Eddie and Simon, who were both at the virtual tribulation realm, and help them build a divine kingdom. She herself didn't show up. A few years had passed, and Eddie was unable to get in touch with Marine Bai. She was so busy with various matters within the secret sect that gradually she forgot about this matter. One day, Master Wallace suddenly told Marine Bai that Zen had appeared and that he would personally go to the Sky Northern region to kill him. Marine Bai suddenly got curious. 2 years ago, Zen was just a warrior at the Illuminating Soul Realm. Was it worth it for a man at the Soul Sea Realm like Master Wallace to personally deal with such a nobody? Were Eddie and Simon that inept that they were unable to kill him? But Master Wallace told her that not only had Zen defeated his soul in the spirit container, but he had also killed Eddie, who was at the life and death realm. Even in the divine kingdoms where talents ran rampant, no one was that strong and talented. From the illuminating soul realm to the virtual tribulation realm, Zen just took 2 years. He even killed a warrior at the 4th grade of the life and death realm. When, and how, did such a talent appear in the Sky Northern region? Even if Marine Bai was the Holy Maiden of the York Divine Kingdom, it would still be difficult for her to command a powerful warrior at the Soul Sea realm. However, since Master Wallace was willing to kill Zen, she had agreed to him doing it without any hesitation. It was also at this time that she started to pay attention to Zen again. She felt that it was strange as to why Master Wallace, a person who would always do something profitable, was interested in someone like Zen. There must be some secret about Zen that had attracted Master Wallace's attention. No matter what, a warrior at the Soul Sea realm was almost invincible in the Sky Northern region. An ant like Zen would never be able to escape death. Marine Bai was 100% sure he would definitely die. Not long after, a message suddenly came from the York Divine Kingdom that Master Wallace's life token had suddenly broken into pieces. Master Abraham's life token had also broken into pieces. There were more than 20 warriors at the Soul Sea realm in the York Divine Kingdom. Although the 4 divine kingdoms competed with each other, their overall relationship was not bad. Under normal circumstances, very few warriors at the Soul Sea realm would die, unless they were at the end of their lifespan, or they went to explore some mysterious ocean where there were many dangers. The fall of these two powerful warriors in the Sky Northern region had shocked the entire York Divine Kingdom. To the four Divine Kingdoms, the Sky Northern region was just a savage land. How could two warriors at the Soul Sea realm be slaughtered in a place like that? It wouldn't be easy even for a powerful warrior at the Soul Sea realm to kill another warrior at the Soul Sea realm. Neither Master Wallace nor Master Abraham sent back a single word before their life tokens broke into pieces. The sudden extermination of the two mighty warriors threw the whole upper echelon of the York Divine Kingdom in chaos. Despite that, they still hadn't made any moves yet. If something really happened in the Sky Northern region, they probably wouldn't be able to investigate even if they sent another two warriors at the Soul Sea realm there. As a result, they kept the deaths of the two warriors as a secret from the civilians. They planned on first exploring the Feather Holy Sea before thinking about how to deal with it. The storms above the chaotic ocean of stars would calm down every once in a few years, and when the storms subsided next time, it wouldn't be too late to form a team of warriors at the Soul Sea realm to explore the Sky Northern region. If some powerful warriors had really appeared there, then they could just annihilate all the living beings in the entire region. Although Marine Bai still wanted to kill Zen, the lives of two warriors at the Soul Sea realm that had been shockingly taken were more important. She couldn't just send more people to the Sky Northern region, and so she could only wait for the day to finally get rid of him. So now, when she heard Randy call out the name, Thad Luo, her gaze immediately landed on that person. Granted that 2 years had already passed and Zen's face had become somewhat unfamiliar to her, a person's spirit and aura could not be changed. Moreover, the fellow's surname was also Luo. Thad Luo, Zen Luo. A cold smile suddenly appeared on Marine Bai's face. She slowly walked to the edge of the platform and floated into the air, staring at Zen with eyes full of hatred. When War Emperor York saw Marine Bai fly out for no reason, a strange expression appeared on his face. "Holy Maiden, what are you doing?" he asked. Marine Bai turned to him slowly. With a smile, she replied, "Your Majesty, I've discovered something that is really interesting." "Something interesting?" War Emperor York's brows furrowed. Confusion was evident on his face. Marine Bai just nodded and then once again turned to Zen. Coldly, she said, "Thad Luo. Humph, you should be called Zen Luo, right?" Since Zen had chosen the path wherein he could be easily recognized, he had naturally anticipated that the Holy Maiden would recognize him. With that, he had already come up with a few plans. He originally wanted to fly into the enchanted barrier in order to challenge Logan. Logan's face was already filled with contempt as he waited for Zen to come. His thoughts were pretty much the same as the other warriors, because the Harlan Divine Kingdom really had no other mighty warriors. They found and sent a warrior at the middle stage of virtual tribulation realm to challenge him. After Marine Bai opened her mouth and spoke, Zen looked up at her and mirrored the strange look on her face. He then smiled and said, "My real name is Thad Luo." "Who is Zen Luo, and why do you call me that?" Seriousness was written all over Zen's face. Marine Bai was confused for a while, wondering if she had made a mistake. After all, it had been 2 years. She was definitely uncertain, but once she carefully looked at Zen, her eyes were once again filled with certainty. "Zen Luo, playing dumb is useless. I have never heard of someone called Thad Luo in the Harlan Divine Kingdom. I assume you crossed the chaotic ocean of stars after the storm stopped, right? You are really bold. Miss Holy Maiden, I am from the Harlan Divine Kingdom. Now, I want to challenge the warrior from your York Divine Kingdom. If you are afraid of me defeating him, you can just admit it. I think slandering me like this is pointless and highly inappropriate, don't you think?" Zen said as he cunningly smiled. At that moment, the 4 emperors were also looking at each other in dismay. As for Randy, an angry expression had already graced his face. "Marine Bai is such a jerk. That is our only hope. Why would this woman suddenly jump out at such a time? I must do something," he thought. Randy had always been arrogant, but he had always been restrained in front of his elders. It was Zen's turn to fight and the glory of the Harlan Divine Kingdom depended on Zen, so how could he tolerate Marine Bai trying to mess everything up? Suddenly, Randy came forwards, and said in a cold voice, "Marine Bai, what nonsense are you saying? Thad Luo is a warrior of the Harlan Divine Kingdom. He is from the Jade Martial House. If the York Divine Kingdom is afraid of him, just ask Logan to admit defeat." Just as Marine Bai was about to speak, Logan sneered, "Afraid of him? Lord Randy, I, Logan Yun, have never been afraid of anyone. Moreover, this guy is only at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm. I can kill him just with a single stab. Ha ha. Randy sneered. Then, could you ask the Holy Maiden to shut up? At that moment, Turner, the Emperor of the Harlan Divine Kingdom, said calmly, Thad Luo is from our Harlan Divine Kingdom. Miss Holy Maiden, are you mistaking him for someone else? The secret sect was connected with the human race in the upper world, and in this world, Marine Bai was its appointed representative. There were so many followers of the secret sect in the four divine kingdoms that even Turner could not reprimand Marine Bai. Mistake him for someone else? That's impossible. Marine Bai was at a loss. She was sure that this fellow was without a doubt Zen, and through Master Wallace, she understood Zen's strength. He was never to be underestimated, and even if his cultivation was at the mid-stage of the virtual tribulation realm, he was able to kill a warrior at the 4th grade of life and death realm. Even though Logan was known among the warriors at the virtual tribulation realm to be someone invincible, he might not be a match for Zen. Miss Holy Maiden, regardless of whether you are mistaking him for someone else or not, I will kill him, Logan said, a confident smile on his lips. Marine Bai's face showed a hint of hesitation as she tilted her head slightly. Suddenly, her eyes lit up as she turned to face War Emperor York. Your Majesty, I'm sure this guy is Zen Luo from the Sky Northern region. He was the one who killed Daniel. If you do not believe me, you can ask Elder Gong. When they entered the celestial tomb, Daniel Lu had a total of 5 bodyguards at the life and death realm by his side. After learning about the death of his son, War Emperor York was angered and killed the 4 bodyguards without hesitation. As for Elder Gong, he had been exempted from death because he had performed deeds of valor in the past. At this time, Marine Bai could only ask Elder Gong to identify Zen. Holy Maiden, are you sure this is the person who killed my child back then? When he heard Marine Bai's words, War Emperor York's originally gloomy face turned even grimmer. Actually, Marine Bai's sudden appearance was a bit rash and rude. But according to War Emperor York's understanding, although her personality was a little off, she wouldn't be talking nonsense in such a situation. Chapter 784, Strange. Marine nodded and said, Your Majesty, I am not mistaken. The eyes of War Emperor York flashed like 2 poisonous snakes as he stared at Zen. He had already been convinced by the Holy Maiden, but now that the man in front of him was a representative of the Harlan Divine Kingdom, he couldn't act rashly. He controlled himself before asking the question he was dreading the answer to. Kid, did you kill my son Daniel? Zen shrugged, his face stoic as he replied, I don't know who Daniel is, nor do I know this woman. And I definitely don't know what you're talking about. Turner couldn't contain himself anymore. 2 of his men from the Harlan Divine Kingdom had been defeated. Not only the Crown Prince had recommended Thad to fight, even Randy had thought highly of him. Now that Thad was being questioned by War Emperor York, he could no longer remain silent as the king of the Harlan Divine Kingdom. Lucian Lu, Thad belongs to our Harlan Divine Kingdom. He has already said that he is not the person you were looking for. Isn't it inappropriate to make things difficult for him like this? Turner asked patiently. Lucian Lu was the name of the War Emperor York. The entire York Divine Kingdom belonged to the Lu clan. In theory, the York Divine Kingdom could be considered an 8th-grade noble clan. Randy paled a little. He knew that Zen's origins were shrouded in mystery and someone with such talent couldn't have been a nameless person before. Randy and the Crown Prince had already secretly investigated Zen's identity and background and both had received shocking news about him. He did not come from the Harlan Divine Kingdom. Since they hadn't been able to find any information about Thad, they began investigating the guard standing with Zen. The result of this investigation puzzled them even more. This life and death realm warrior called Francis actually belonged to the York Divine Kingdom and was also a steward of the secret sect. Such results made Zen's identity seem all the more confusing. Of course, not that Randy cared much about Zen's identity, but the key was that Zen could help Randy, and that was enough for him. As to the Crown Prince. Now, Bram was sure that what Marine had said was true. This fellow, who went by the name Thad, must be from the Central region. The Crown Prince, Bram, had wanted Zen to represent him in battle, but Zen hadn't moved an inch, making it clear to Bram that he wasn't going to listen to him. So of course, Bram wouldn't come forward to speak for Zen. But he wouldn't step up to expose Zen's identity either. After all, Zen now fought for and represented the Harlan Divine Kingdom. It was impossible for Bram to do something that would put the Harlan Divine Kingdom at a disadvantage. If he did, his father would be greatly disappointed. Yet, right after Turner finished speaking, War Emperor York ignored him and snorted coldly. He looked at Zen and said, I don't need you to speak the truth. I will search your soul myself. As War Emperor York pointed a finger at Zen, powerful energy radiating from his soul spread out from the spot between his eyebrows. It's a soul attack. War Emperor York has actually directly used his soul attack. A powerful master at the Soul Sea realm can turn a warrior at the virtual tribulation realm into a moron by using just his oppressing force of soul. I never thought that War Emperor York would attack a young man using the soul attack. The warrior called Thad is doomed. Moments ago, there had been a lot of virtual tribulation realm martial artists clamoring in the plaza, almost getting into a fight. One of the powerful masters at the Soul Sea realm released his soul force and suppressed all the virtual tribulation realm martial artists. The soul oppressing force was not used to hurt people. The masters usually released their formidable power of the soul force just to intimidate crowds. However, the souls of mighty masters at the Soul Sea realm were usually very powerful. If they used all of their soul oppressing force to frighten a warrior at the virtual tribulation realm, it would be enough to turn him into a moron. And right about now, War Emperor York had directly used a soul attack. He wanted to erase Zen's consciousness and search his soul. That was the only direct and simple method to solve the problem he was facing. But as Zen's soul was scoured and the memories extracted, he would suffer mental damage to a great extent. In simpler terms, Zen would become just a simpleton, if War Emperor York was to search his soul. It was obvious that War Emperor York didn't care whether Zen lived or not. Lucian Liu, Turner's face drained of color. He hadn't expected Lucian to do this, to act without any warning. Turner had had no time to stop him. It was clear as day that War Emperor York wasn't afraid of Turner. He knew that Turner would not look for trouble with him just because of an unimportant virtual tribulation realm warrior. So he decided to go ahead with what he wanted. As everyone watched in mounting horror, the wave of soul energy charged at Zen. Zen's gaze flickered with a faint light as he stared apathetically at War Emperor York. Zen had sensed the power of this soul energy ever since it had come out. His soul was now very close to the Jasper fighting soul realm, and any soul below this realm wouldn't be able to harm him much. It was obvious that this soul force was released from a soul that belonged to the fighting soul realm. Zen wasn't afraid of it at all. So he stood calmly in the sky, his face completely expressionless. But he was on high alert, wary of War Emperor York. The fact that War Emperor York had obtained the title of War Emperor meant that he was one of the top masters of the Soul Sea realm. If this person wanted to kill Zen, he wouldn't be able to survive in the first round of the fight with him. But the issue here was that War Emperor wanted to kill him before clarifying anything. He didn't seem to care about what anyone else had to say. Zen wasn't bothered about suffering the soul attack. The problem was that he was being targeted by War Emperor York. Zen did not choose to fight back, nor did he summon the Cyan Dragon to devour the soul attack that War Emperor York was unleashing. And right now, Zen had to only endure it all because if he fought back, War Emperor York might seriously take him on. Even an ordinary master of the Soul Sea realm whose soul had just entered the fighting soul realm would not be able to withstand the attack of War Emperor York. With the powerful soul attack crushing on the ordinary master, the person's soul would soon be injured or even disintegrate. War Emperor York's powerful soul attack poured into Zen's soul continuously. But Zen's soul was incomparably tough, and constantly flickered with a jade green light. No harm was done to it. His soul has probably shattered. He didn't move an inch. He will definitely become a moron. What a pitiful fellow. He shouldn't have offended War Emperor York. War Emperor York is certainly not someone to be trifled with. As the many virtual tribulation realm warriors saw this powerful soul attack, their fear began to etch itself on their faces. Although this attack wasn't directed at them, they could feel a small portion of the domineering force from the soul attack reflected onto them. And that was enough to make them shiver. Randy closed his eyes and furrowed his eyebrows. Even though he hadn't known Zen for long, he really admired his great talent and power. Most importantly, Zen was humble and honest, which was also a reason why Randy valued Zen so much and why he treated Zen as a true friend. If it were any other powerful Soul Sea realm master who was attacking Zen, he would have tried to stop him. However, he wasn't able enough to fight against War Emperor York. It was too late even if he wanted to stop him. Turner sighed softly and said, "Okay, Lucian Liu. No matter what, he represents our Harlan Divine Kingdom. Do not destroy his life energy. Let him live." If Zen's soul was completely destroyed, his life energy would be gone. But it was possible that if Zen's shattered soul remained in his mind, he would not die. Instead, he would become a simpleton. Turner had had no time to stop Lucian from attacking Zen, so he could only ask Lucian to spare his life. It was better to become a simpleton than to become dead. But just as soon as Turner finished talking, a strange expression crossed Lucian's face. He stared at Zen firmly. The situation had become entangled in a tight deadlock for a while. Many of the powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm noticed that something was wrong. It was not only Turner who felt something strange, but also Scott from the Starfield Divine Kingdom as well as War King Wind from the Wind Divine Kingdom. They were all confused and stared oddly at Zen before looking over at War Emperor York. Thad's eyes were clear and full of spirit. It looked like he wasn't hurt. What was going on? Could it be that War Emperor York had saved his strength? This was impossible. The four kings had been on their thrones for so many years, and they knew each other's tempers very well. War Emperor York Lucian Lu had always been sullen, extremely cold-blooded and arrogant. If he chose to make a move, there was absolutely no possibility of him holding back at all. However, Thad seemed to be safe and sound. What had happened? Back on the stairs, many powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm had puzzled looks on their faces, unable to understand the situation at all. As time passed, not only did the powerful masters at the Soul Sea realm feel that something was wrong, even the Life and Death realm warriors and the other virtual Tribulation realm warriors had sensed Zen's abnormality. Zen didn't seem to have been harmed even a little. Chapter 785, Determined to protect Zen. The only excuse that the audience could think of to explain what was currently happening before their eyes was that War Emperor York had unexpectedly shown immense mercy to Zen. He couldn't have gone all out to attack Zen. After the Soul Sea was created by martial artists, they created a world within their body in order to make it easier for them to cultivate their souls. The resources of the lower world were scarce. It was completely incomparable to what the upper world had. In the lower world, the means for martial artists to cultivate their souls weren't that many. In the upper world, many talented martial artists could cultivate their souls and make their souls enter the fighting soul realm while they were at the virtual tribulation realm or life and death realm. In the lower world, however, many martial artists could only cultivate their souls and make their souls reach the fighting soul realm after they had created the Soul Sea and had reached the Soul Sea realm. Zen was a shining exception to this. From a certain point of view, however, this was not totally unexpected. First of all, Zen did not cultivate his soul in the lower world. He had actually relied on the Dragon Soar Arena to ascend to the genuine dragon world. It was in that place that he had gone through the Owl Beast Devil Spirits test, and that made it possible for his soul to improve rapidly. Moreover, he was able to absorb a significant amount of soul force and that helped his soul to reach the fighting soul realm. In the lower world, the most powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm would easily suppress all the life and death realm warriors. The gap between their level of soul was vastly enormous. Only after reaching the fighting soul realm could one's soul be transformed into a powerful weapon. War Emperor York stared at Zen in utter confusion. He could feel Zen's powerful soul which was in no way weaker than his own. In fact, it seemed like it was even stronger. If Zen staged a counterattack, War Emperor York would inevitably suffer. At the very least, the wisp of his soul that he used to attack Zen with would likely be exterminated. Moments passed and it became clear that Zen would not counterattack. War Emperor York thought that he was probably wary of his overall strength. War Emperor York stared at Zen blankly for a while before saying, good job. At such a young age and with such a low cultivation level, you actually possess a soul close to the Jasper fighting soul realm. Such a young hero, you are. The moment the people around heard what War Emperor York said, their faces became contorted with expressions of utter disbelief. They all originally thought that War Emperor York had held back his strength, but with his pronouncement, he had indirectly confirmed that wasn't the case. It was just that Zen's soul had almost reached the Jasper fighting soul realm. Even for warriors at Soul Sea realm, it would be extremely difficult for their soul to enter the Jasper fighting soul realm. It was all the more impossible for such thing to happen in the lower world. In the lower world, the available number of refinement techniques and pills used to cultivate one's soul was simply too small. Then, even if someone got a hold of them, their effects were usually very poor. Another thing was, since the ancient times, there had never been a life and death realm warrior that had cultivated his soul to reach the Jasper fighting soul realm. Zen was just a warrior at virtual tribulation realm. How was he able to achieve that? Furthermore, he was only at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm. These played inside everyone's head as their stares bounced off from War Emperor York to Zen, their mouths wide open. Without any hesitation, Marine, the Holy Maiden immediately said, yes. Master Wallace has mentioned before that the spirit container he arranged in the Sky Northern region was destroyed by Zen Luo. This person's soul force is so strong. We don't need Elder Gong to come to have a look. You are definitely Zen Luo. No matter who this kid is, how did he cultivate his soul to such a level that even War Emperor York was helpless against him? Isn't this all too shocking? Furthermore, he came from a small place like the Sky Northern region. It has been said since ancient times that if a life and death realm warrior enters the Sky Northern region, he can flatten the entire region and kill all the living beings there. This is impossible. How could such a talent come from such a place like the Sky Northern region? The virtual Tribulation Realm warriors who could stand beside the West Dragon River were basically the divine level talents of the 4 divine kingdoms. Moreover, they were talents of the first tier and the second tier. There were rarely any third-tier warriors among them. These divine-level talents even had a high possibility of stepping into the Soul Sea realm in the future. But then, in the end, that was just a possibility. There still weren't many warriors who had been able to reach the Soul Sea realm. Despite this, nothing had stopped them from being conceited. After all, they were the best warriors in the 4 divine kingdoms. But at this moment, nothing could stop them from being shocked. Zen's glaringly formidable strength wasn't the main source of their surprise, however. After all, there were many ways to gauge a martial artist's strength: cultivation method, strength, speed, cultivation level, and soul. The soul was just one aspect. Just like what War Emperor York had said, Zen's soul was indeed strong, like it was close to the Jasper fighting soul realm, incomparable to all of theirs. However, this did not mean that Zen's all other aspects were very strong. After all, he had not shown his real strength yet. But the mere fact that Zen's soul was close to the Jasper fighting soul realm made them incredibly jealous. They didn't want to believe what they were seeing and hearing. It was similar to a story about a group of young people, all in the same age, who were in the same starting line together. Every day, they would earn the same amount of money, but occasionally, one of them would earn twice as much. Every other person would get jealous, but since that was a normal occurrence, they would just carry on and try to earn as much as the guy who earned twice. However, one day, a person suddenly appeared. This fellow was around the same age as them, and his cultivation level was also around the same as theirs. However, in the end, he had earned 100, even 1,000 times more money than them. How could everyone accept that lying down? Despite that, they still didn't have the courage to try harder and catch up to what the new fellow had already earned. The 3 powerful masters at the Soul Sea realm of the Jade Martial House were more surprised at War Emperor York's words. They had seen Zen's strength before and they knew what he was capable of. Not only did he have an outstanding level of comprehension towards the laws, but his own strength had also reached a terrifyingly high level. But now, the 3 of them had discovered that Zen's soul was that powerful. Zen was indeed a flawless warrior. They then started to wonder, in the future, after he broke through and reached the Soul Sea realm, how terrifying would his strength be? The eyes of Crown Prince Bram were firmly fixed on Zen. A soul close to the Jasper fighting soul realm, how could this be? And why? Alas, if I could win him over, he would definitely be great help to me in the future. Unfortunately, this person has already joined Randy's team. What am I going to do? He thought, his eyes narrowing. Today, the kings of the 4 divine kingdoms were present together with the crown princes and other princes from every divine kingdom. The princes who were there were all the powerful ones. They were all martial artists that were at the first tier. Some of the princes who were present were even strong enough to be ranked at the top of the first tier. These princes would eventually be important players in the game of the 4 divine kingdoms in the future. The divine level talents would eventually have the opportunity to become powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm, if they didn't perish. However, for these princes, there was no doubt that they would reach the Soul Sea realm. Despite all their potential, however, each of them had suddenly felt a pang in their chests. They had been the pride of the divine kingdoms. Being the strongest warriors of the younger generation, they had steadily grown under the protection of their royal fathers. With the privilege to enjoy massive resources and practice places, their achievements and strength were several times greater than that of other warriors of the same age. But now, they felt frustrated by Zen's shocking potential. There was a saying that, comparisons are odious. In the past, no one had been able to compete with them because they were a group of martial artists that walked at the forefront. They were the best of the best. But now, they were starting to compare themselves to Zen, and they discovered that between him and them, there was a huge disparity. Humph, he is only strong on his soul level. He must have obtained some great lucky chance that caused a change in his soul. His own strength might not be able to withstand a single blow from me. I actually want to fight with this guy. It's useless just having a strong soul. I have the soul-protecting secret weapon bestowed by my royal father. I'm sure this kid wouldn't be able to hurt me. I'll wait and see. If this kid can defeat Logan, maybe I'll be interested in playing with him. Thoughts ran wild inside the prince's minds, effectively drowning their self-doubts and insecurities. They couldn't afford to wallow in those thoughts. As for Lord Randy, his eyes flashed with undeterred excitement when he opened his eyes. He had long noticed that Zen was extraordinary, but he didn't expect that Zen's soul would be so ridiculously strong. Even Lucian couldn't do anything about it. It was such a big surprise. But at the same time, he suddenly became vigilant. He sent a message to Turner through his life vitality, "Father." How could Turner not understand what Randy wanted to say? Just now, Lucian had suddenly made a move and used his soul to attack Zen. Unexpectedly, Zen's soul wasn't weaker than his at all. With that revelation, his intent to kill Zen became stronger than ever. If he used life vitality to crush Zen, he surely wouldn't survive. Zen wouldn't be able to survive. Turner thought to himself, doubts starting to creep up on him. It would be a different case if such an extraordinary talent hadn't appeared in the Harlan Divine Kingdom. But now that he had already arrived and everyone knew of his existence, Turner had to protect him at all risks. Whoosh! Turner's figure flashed and soon he was standing between Zen and War Emperor York. After a few moments of silence, he calmly said to War Emperor York, "Lucian, it's enough. As a king, don't you think it's a bit too much to attack a kid like that? It doesn't matter if he's Zen Luo or Thad Luo, he's a member of our Harlan Divine Kingdom." Turner looked firm as he said this. The meaning behind his words was crystal clear. It didn't matter if Zen had killed the Prince of York Divine Kingdom or not, Turner was determined to protect him at all cost. Chapter 786, The Battle Began. Where there were people, there was also struggle. The four great divine kingdoms were closely related and mutually dependent on each other. There had never occurred a large-scale war among them. However, that didn't mean they didn't compete with each other. On the other hand, because the four divine kingdoms maintained a close relationship with each other and couldn't annex each other's territories into their own, the covert competition among them got intense. It was also the reason why the divine kingdoms had established so many martial houses. Each one of them was interested in cultivating new talents. As the ruler of the Harlan Divine Kingdom, Turner was aware of how valuable Zen was. Although he still hadn't seen Zen's true strength, he knew that Zen was at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm and that his soul was close to the Jasper fighting soul realm. It meant that he had become very powerful. Turner spoke kindly, but he wasn't afraid of War Emperor York. In the past few years, the York Divine Kingdom had developed the most. It was ranked first among all kingdoms in terms of overall strength, while the Harlan Divine Kingdom, being the weakest, was ranked fourth. Still, if the strength of the Divine Kingdom kings were to be compared, Turner was not so inferior to Lucian. Hearing what Turner said, Lucian grew annoyed. "Turner, what do you mean?" "My meaning is clear," he replied calmly. "No matter if he is Zen or Thad, he is the member of the Harlan Divine Kingdom, for he is from the Jade Martial House of the Harlan Divine Kingdom." A trace of a cold smile appeared on Lucian's face. He harumphed, saying, "Since you say it like that, does it mean that my son died in vain?" The corner of Turner's mouth curled up slightly as he responded to this accusation. "If I'm not wrong, Lucian, you have more than 20,000 descendants, right?" Some Divine Kingdom rulers were fond of women and had many sons. Each ruler had fathered a great many number, for as leaders of the kingdoms, the more sons they had, the better it was for them. Only then would they be able to choose an outstanding one to be heir to the throne. However, Lucian had more sons than the other Divine Kingdom rulers. He was extremely fond of women. His imperial harem stretched over 1,000,000 square miles, equivalent to a medium-sized city. Tens of thousands of beauties were a part of it. The number of princes his wives had given him was probably close to 20,000. He probably didn't even remember the names of all his sons. The princes weren't worth a lot in the Divine Kingdom. They all had to rely on talent and strength alone in order to prove themselves and be in their father's good graces. Most princes of inferior talent were eliminated cruelly from the competition. From a certain point of view, the lives of these incompetent princes were worse than those of ordinary people. I indeed have many sons. Among them, Daniel was extremely talented and remarkable. I deeply favored him and he had a good relationship with the Holy Maiden. I'm his father, can't I gain some compensation for his death? Lucian asked Turner coldly. Hearing this, Turner sneered silently, realizing that Lucian was finally revealing his true colors. Among the four rulers, Lucian was notorious for being deceitful and foxy. It was clear that in saying all this, he just wanted to extort something from Turner. "I will make it up to you. But believe me when I say that Thad is a warrior from the Harlan Divine Kingdom." Turner moved aside slowly, saying to Zen, "Thad." Zen smiled and cupped his hands before Turner. Yes, I'm here. My son, Randy, wants you to represent him in the battle. Do your best. Please be careful. After saying so, Turner returned to the elevated platform. He was the Divine Kingdom's ruler. It was kind of him to favor Zen. After all, Zen was just a virtual Tribulation Realm warrior. He had warned Zen to be careful of the warrior of the York Divine Kingdom. After what he said to Lucian, the latter naturally would not make a move against Zen again. However, the strength of the York Divine Kingdom's younger generation warriors could not be underestimated. If the warrior were to accidentally kill Zen, Turner would not be able to protect him anymore. If such a thing happened, it would only establish that Zen was not all that powerful. He was going to represent Lord Randy in the battle. The Harlan Divine Kingdom was under the control of the Joe clan. Lord Randy's full name was Randy Joe. Zen was moved by Turner's warning. After all, he was not truly a warrior from the Harlan Divine Kingdom. But Turner was willing to protect Zen, even though he was just a virtual Tribulation Realm warrior. It quite exceeded Zen's expectations. Lucian had stopped his attacks on Zen for the moment. Zen turned around and flew toward the enchanted barrier in the air, his gaze finally landing on Logan. The corners of Logan's mouth curled up, his smile exuding confidence. Your soul is very powerful, he said lightly. However, I wonder about your true strength. Now that Zen had the fighting soul, he had a bigger advantage over other ordinary virtual Tribulation Realm warriors. Even Logan, who was doubtlessly confident in his own abilities, was a little worried. He possessed a magic treasure to protect his soul, but he wasn't certain that he would be able to tolerate Zen's soul attack. Zen smiled at him. Don't worry, I won't use the soul attack. These words surprised Logan. He wondered if the young man before him was more arrogant than even himself. Zen clearly had an unparalleled advantage in one aspect, but apparently he had decided not to make use of it. Moreover, he had already witnessed Logan's strength before. It looked like Zen was confident of defeating Logan. Goodness, he is confident. Logan, you must try your best to defeat him. Lucian shouted out. The meaning behind his words could not be more obvious. He wanted to prevent Zen from using his soul to suppress the opponent. As such, Zen would have to challenge Logan with his own strength. Logan nodded confidently. Since Zen had given up his advantage of the soul attack, Logan was confident of his triumph. He had always believed he could not find a powerful virtual Tribulation Realm opponent who could outmatch him, for he was the most invincible one among the virtual Tribulation Realm warriors. However, after hearing Lucian's words, Logan understood that Lucian didn't want him to merely break one of Zen's arms. He wanted Logan to go ahead and kill Zen. Zen drew out a long sword from his body. It flashed with a faint golden glow in the sunlight as he swung it. A top-grade sacred weapon. Seeing Zen's sword, Logan raised his brows, his eyes alight. Even within the Harlan Divine Kingdom, a region famous for weapon refiners, top-grade sacred weapons were rare. Even if they did exist, they belonged to the royal family. It was unheard of for an ordinary warrior to obtain them. So when Turner saw the top-grade sacred weapon in Zen's hand, he too got curious. Randy, was this top-grade sacred weapon a gift from you? Randy shook his head. Zen didn't ask me for the sacred weapon. It must be his own. Turner shook his head and smiled. I'm afraid this boy is a mystery. He may not just be an ordinary warrior born in the Sky Northern region. The reasoning behind his speculation was simple. The Sky Northern region was a poor place, so it was impossible to cultivate a weapon refiner there who was capable of refining a top-grade sacred weapon. There might be a few of those there, but none of them could have found the materials required to refine a top-grade sacred weapon in the Sky Northern region. Turner was a weapon refiner himself. He was well aware of the costs involved in forging a top-grade sacred weapon. Randy nodded. I understand. However, Thad is a good, kind man, and we get along well with each other. We have a similar character and the same hobbies. Therefore, I gave him the life stones as a gift. Well done. If a person like him is willing to stay in our Harlan Divine Kingdom, the benefits he would bring to us in the future are incalculable, Turner said. Listening on to this conversation between Randy and Turner, the Crown Prince, Bram, sunk in his seat, visibly displeased. Bram and Randy Joe had competed for a long time, and now Randy Joe had become the Lord. Even though Bram was the heir to the throne, he knew the competition between Randy and himself had not yet ended. Unless he could step into the Soul Sea realm in the future and his father stepped down from the throne, Randy still had the chance to fight him for the position as the heir to the throne. And now, Bram's hopes seemed to be dashing. The nervousness that Zen's presence brought him could be well imagined. While they were talking, the battle began. Logan had toned down his contempt. He manifested layers of space armor while the space-chopping sword in his hand swung in the space. It was as if countless ripples broke through the surface of air, emitting rays of various colors in the sunlight. Logan took a step forward and a string of figures appeared in the sky. Strangely, he then materialized next to Zen. Chapter 787, The Other Side of Space. The space law was such a powerful technique that Logan only needed to use 2 simple moves to defeat his challengers. He traveled through space and then slashed his sword to his rival before the latter could react. Though his strategy leaned on its simplicity, it seemed that no one was able to figure out how to dodge his attacks. Defeating the first-tier warriors from the other kingdoms was a breeze for Logan. After all, the space law wasn't that easy to grasp. Most people had not the slightest knowledge about it, let alone knew how to cultivate or apply it. When Logan managed to comprehend the 3rd layer of the space law, his strength was able to surpass other warriors of the same level. As he traveled through space during his attack on Zen, he was surprised to witness how his rival had also disappeared right before him. He felt the familiar power of the space law. So he knows the space law, too. Logan was startled by that revelation. He hastily swung his space-chopping sword but missed. There was a hint of sarcasm on Zen's face as he looked at Logan from where he stood. They weren't that far away from each other. Seeing Zen's expression, Logan's face flushed with anger. When did any warrior with the same cultivation level dare mock him? In addition, Zen was only at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm. The crowd began discussing their shared surprise. I never expected that this Thad is also proficient in the space law. I bet he has grasped the 2nd layer of it at least. But Logan has already comprehended the 3rd layer of the space law. I wonder who comes out of this battle victorious. So what if it's the 3rd layer? I don't think Logan has completely comprehended the 3rd layer. He has grasped 10% of it at most, so his advantage isn't that colossal. Ultimately, their fighting abilities shall decide the outcome. If Thad doesn't use his soul attack to crush Logan, I think his chance of winning is still slim. Many of the divine-level geniuses gasped in awe when they witnessed Zen's own usage of the space law. They believed that he was one lucky kid. Not only did he possess a strong soul, but he also practiced the most formidable of all, the space law. Seems like I need to take you more seriously, Logan said, renouncing all of his contempt by tightening his grip on the space-chopping sword. Aren't you serious enough? Zen smiled. He knew that he was getting on Logan's last nerve. Die, Logan yelled in gritted teeth. Taking another step forward, he disappeared once again. Wait, what? Zen's eyes widened with how quick he was. He couldn't sense any of Logan's breath, too. For a moment there, it seemed that he completely disappeared from the world. Zen knew that it could be one of the abilities a warrior could possess after grasping the 3rd layer of the space law. Logan didn't disappear totally, he was only hiding in the void. The 1st layer of the space law could enable the cultivator to travel through space for a short distance, but that was only the phenomenon on the surface. The ultimate goal was to connect 2 space nodes with the help of the space law so that one could move through them. After grasping the 2nd layer, the cultivator could temporarily stay out of the space. Zen could only stay in the void for a little while. Like a rock thrown into the sky would be pulled back to the ground by gravity in an instant, his body would also be rejected by the void and return to the normal space. After the cultivator had already grasped the 1st and 2nd layers of the space law, there were still many other methods that he could use to fight. For instance, he could condense the space armor or the space-chopping sword with the help of the space law. The obelisk in the genuine dragon world only recorded the 1st layer of the space law, and Zen had only grasped the 2nd layer in the Tower of Sin. Although Zen didn't comprehend the 3rd layer yet, he guessed that Logan was able to hide in the void. With eyes like a hawk's, Zen carefully scanned the space around him. Indeed, Logan was a force to be reckoned with. Zen knew that, too. The ordinary warriors at the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm were obviously just snacks for him. If he were to hide in the void and launch a sneak attack, Zen didn't have much choice. It was questionable whether or not he could sidestep that possible attack. Whoosh! Since he was keen-eyed at that same exact moment, Zen easily felt the familiar energy wave of the space law getting closer. He's here, Zen whispered to himself. He felt an immense sense of danger. Once again, he traveled through space and left the place. As Zen began to move a distance, he saw Logan back at the same spot as he looked back. Logan reappeared with a murderous smile on his face. A few drops of red blood dripped down from the blade of the sword in his hand. That's one unique physique you've got. That slash was supposed to cut your neck open. Logan looked at Zen with a strange expression. He shook his head and smiled casually. Then, he stuck his tongue out to lick the blood off the sword, but I am too slow. The next time, I'll be faster, and there's no more escaping for you. A thin line of blood appeared on Zen's neck. The space-chopping sword was able to destroy a sacred weapon. Even Zen's body, which was as strong as a top-grade fairy weapon, was unable to hold out against it. However, if it was another person, they could have already been decapitated. Zen looked extremely calm and collected as he replied, "There will be no next time. Even if you hid in the void, I would see right through your dirty movements." "Huh, really? Isn't that just impressive?" Logan mocked Zen's words. He refused to believe him. Once again, he quickly disappeared right before his very eyes. The void was separated from the normal space of the world. Generally speaking, it was the world within the space cracks, which was like the opposite side of a mirror. It was the other side of space where nothing existed. Nothing. Logan wasn't using a concealment skill, nor did he intend on releasing a breath that Zen could catch. It was impossible for Zen to detect him through his movements, as he said. As expected, Logan is not an easy opponent, someone from the audience commented. Logan is truly the pride of our York Divine Kingdom. It's true what they say, he is an invincible figure among all the warriors at the virtual tribulation realm. There is no way out of his attacks. This Thad will certainly die in the hands of Logan. Since War Emperor York has already revealed his hostility towards him, he won't allow Thad to leave this place alive. The warriors of the Jade Martial House also watched the battle anxiously. Based on the commotion before the battle began, most warriors of the Harlan Divine Kingdom had guessed that Zen was most likely from the Sky Northern region and wasn't a true member of their kingdom. However, Zen represented the Harlan Divine Kingdom in the battle in the name of the Jade Martial House. Their King Turner had confirmed so. That was why they were not to treat Zen as an outsider. "Come on, Thad, be careful of him and always move rapidly. Make sure he doesn't catch up to you." Many warriors of the Harlan Divine Kingdom encouraged Zen through ways they could think of at the time. After Logan hid into the void, Zen raised the sword in his hand. His eyes flickered for a moment before an emerald green light flowed inside them. He was activating his magic vision. Such a skill allowed him to see through illusions and detect subtle changes in movements around him. Logan's strategy of traveling through the void with the thought of assassinating him did shake Zen a little. However, he still had a way to solve that problem. When Zen had fully activated his magic vision, the entire world became green in his eyes. Even if Logan was walking on the other side of space, it was impossible that he didn't leave tracks. Thanks to his magic vision, Zen noticed a tiny black line extending through the air. It was a trajectory left behind by Logan's movement throughout the void. This black line could not be seen with the naked eyes nor be detected with soul perception as well. However, it was clear as day through Zen's magic vision. It was of utmost importance to be stealthy at all times. So instead of just focusing on the strange line, Zen kept glancing around and pretended that he didn't notice Logan's movements at all. Meanwhile, Logan was also getting on full guard against Zen. He cautiously circled around him before he slowly approached from up front. It seemed that he wanted to attack him by surprise from his front view. As the black line drew closer, Zen's face started to grow hesitant. As it got close enough, he suddenly revealed a sly smile as he forcefully thrust his sword forward. The timing was perfect. His weapon collided against Logan's space-chopping sword. Since Logan had just come out of the void, he had left a space crack behind him which was just enough for a person to pass through. Zen took advantage of this opportunity as he, not only forced Logan back, but followed him into the space crack as well. Previously, the Soul Sea Realm Masters had created an enchanted barrier for the battles between the virtual Tribulation Realm warriors. But now, both of them had disappeared from the arena where they were supposed to showcase their fight. Chapter 788, Suffering a Lot. Despite Zen's extensive comprehension of space, his attempts to enter the void still proved futile. Logan was quick to attack and also quick to disappear. Although Zen could vaguely feel Logan's presence, he could only clearly pinpoint his location just before he attacked. Zen was more or less a sitting duck. But not for long. Zen had already mapped out a strategy in his head. Since he could only locate Logan in that split second before he attacked, Zen steeled himself and waited for his strike. 3, 4, maybe 5 seconds later, Zen felt a prickling sensation on his neck and he quickly determined Logan's exact position. Not wasting this opportunity, Zen deflected his opponent's strike and pushed him back into the void. However, he didn't allow Logan to go in alone. Zen also slipped through the space crack and followed his opponent inside. This was when Logan realized that he had been too careless. He thought that his sudden, unpredictable attacks would have been enough to weaken Zen, but the young man was actually smart and saw through his strategy. He had opened the space crack a bit too big and had let Zen in. The two vanished into thin air, greatly confusing the spectators back on the square. Where did the two fighters go? They stared at the sky blankly, not knowing where to find them. It was only the powerful Soul Sea Realm Masters and a few of the Life and Death Realm warriors that kept gazing at the sky as if the fight hadn't taken a strange turn at all. To see through the void, a warrior would need to develop his or her own special skill. Turner, for example, had eyes that shone with golden light that enabled him to see through everything. War Emperor York had eyes of the darkest night that let him do the same thing. Others turned to their magical items. One of the powerful Soul Sea Realm Masters, for example, placed a transparent crystal in front of his eyes in order to watch the battle now happening in the void. The two warriors were currently engaged in a heated fight in the void. Zen's entry into the void made Logan lose his composure, but only for a moment. The fact remained that this was still his territory, so with a loud battle cry, he lifted his space-chopping sword and brought it down upon his opponent. An ordinary sacred weapon would stand no chance against the space-chopping sword. It was a good thing that Zen's sword was a top-grade sacred weapon that could go head-to-head with Logan's space-chopping sword. As the two fought, Logan's handicap soon became apparent. The martial skill he cultivated was simple, but by no means inferior. It focused on agility, strength, and precision. Logan preferred this method due to the fact that he wanted to achieve the best results using the most powerful swordsmanship technique in the shortest amount of time. It was similar to the minimalist approach Zen also pursued with his own methods. However, the no move that Zen had comprehended actually worked best against Logan's simple swordsmanship. Zen's no move could only be beaten in two ways. First was to completely ignore Zen's move and directly suppress him with brute, physical strength. The second was to simply grasp an even more ingenious move. Of course, there might be some mighty powerful martial artist who could achieve that. Such person couldn't be found in the lower world and it surely wasn't Logan. My swordsmanship is completely at a disadvantage. Logan thought, his strikes now becoming sloppy because of his desperation. Logan was a proud man. He was someone who came from nothing but, through relying on his diligence and talent, was able to rise and become an outstanding warrior. He was now at the first tier among the warriors in the younger generation of the York Divine Kingdom, so his helplessness right now really got to him. Furthermore, his swordsmanship method was the secret sect's secret inheritance that had been passed down from the upper world. To have Zen easily break through it really dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. Zen's strike was akin to the incantation of the golden hoop. A pressure tightly bound his limbs and prevented him from fully executing his best moves. What was more frustrating was how simple Zen's technique was. Every time Logan came at him with the space-chopping sword, Zen simply lifted his sword and casually deflected the blow. His movement was gentle and his face was calm while Logan became even more irate at what was happening. Not able to hold it back any longer, Logan eventually snapped, "Break it." Space-chopping sword, chaotic space slash. He clenched his teeth as hundreds of sword shadows burst forth from his space-chopping sword. Logan's now dark red eyes and ominous sword still did not deter Zen, who casually flicked his sword to strike. Chink. After comprehending the no move, Zen could see through most of the swordsmanship. He knew Logan had already exhausted his space-chopping sword to its limit. It was over for him. The casual strike collided with the space-chopping sword. For a split second, Logan met Zen's eyes and was stunned with the smile he gave him. Then, an irresistible force began to pour out from Zen's sword. As the powerful force instantly surged out, Logan almost couldn't hold the sword in his hand. If it wasn't for the fact that the space-chopping sword was condensed by him through the space law and had already become a part of him, it would have already flown out of his grip from the sheer amount of power that surged out from Zen. Zen had no trouble getting closer to Logan. He still managed to deflect Logan's sword and made it possible for him to reach Logan. As soon as he was at an arm's length, Zen threw a punch at his opponent's chest. Bam! Zen's punch was not enough to break through the space armor, so Logan got unharmed. Nevertheless, Logan was still sent flying back a few feet by the force of the attack. It's still not enough, Zen thought to himself. His eyes lit up as his body flashed and chased after Logan, who was quickly retreating. In a burst of panic, Logan turned and immediately thrust at his pursuer, but Zen simply deflected his space-chopping sword just like he did multiple times earlier. Bam! Zen once again got close enough to land another punch on the space armor. This time, his strike contained the power of 300 dragon scales, which effectively left a network of spider cracks on the space armor. Not only is his swordsmanship incomparable, he even possesses such strong power. Is he a monster? Logan couldn't help but think to himself. There was fear in his heart, and it wasn't a feeling that he was used to. In the younger generation, besides the royal members of the 4 divine kingdoms, there was also one other person who he thought was a monster, and that was a warrior from the 9 Furnace Martial House. However, that was before. Now that he had faced Zen, Logan now knew what the true definition of a monster was. That 9 Furnace Martial House warrior was powerful, but he had a weakness. Zen, on the other hand, seemed to have no weakness. There was just no point denying it. His soul was strong, his swordsmanship was exquisite, and his strength could flatten down 1,000 mountains, perhaps more. If it wasn't for his space armor, Logan wouldn't have withstood even a single punch from Zen. "I'm not his match," he finally admitted to himself despite his pride. A strong wind howled upon the banks of the West Dragon River. If one was not careful, the wind could effectively push them towards the river's depths, ultimately sending them to their deaths. The warriors present here were at least at virtual tribulation realm. They all stood still and patiently waited for the outcome of Zen and Logan's battle. The powerful Soul Sea Realm Masters already knew the outcome, but those in the square were still clueless with the events that had transpired within the void. "I wonder who's got the upper hand. Will Thad make it through? I believe he can win." "I believe it too." The martial artists of the Harlan Divine Kingdom could only place their hopes upon Zen. However, the warriors of the York Divine Kingdom could only laugh at their wishes. These warriors are too naive. Logan has comprehended the 3rd layer of space law. He is invincible. How could Thad ever win this? What a joke. Logan possesses the strength to fight a life and death realm master. Thad is only at the virtual tribulation realm, so there's no way he'd win. These people are delusional. Just let them be. Reality is cruel. Once Logan emerges as the victor, they'd wake up from their delusions. Those from the York Divine Kingdom were at ease given the terrifying display of strength Logan had already shown everyone earlier. At this moment, everyone suddenly felt a wave of energy coming from the sky. It was so strong that almost everyone immediately felt it. "They are out." Everyone witnessed how a strange crack appeared in the air as a figure staggered out, evidently injured from the fight. "The battle's over. Looks like that isn't a match for Lo." Before the York Divine Kingdom warrior could finish his sentence, he realized that the miserable figure that had come out was none other than Logan. "Logan, he looks horrible." The sight shocked the warriors of the York Divine Kingdom to the core. "It's obvious he suffered a lot under Thad's hands," a warrior with sharp eyes said, shaking his head. Chapter 789, The Little Monster. As soon as Logan escaped from the void, Zen came out as well. The counterattack that Logan had launched was useless. Zen used his no-move skill to easily divert the space-chopping sword. With a crisp sound, Zen threw out a strong punch. Plink, bam, those moves from Zen suppressed Logan to a point where he had no chance to fight back. He had become weak. With that punch, Logan's armor wore out some more. It was now covered with cracks as if it could break apart at any given moment. Again, indeed, Logan was one of those people who refused to admit defeat before their death. He would rather die than wave the white flag. Plink, bam, in a situation where both sides' strength was equal, it was usually the martial artist with a more powerful will who won. Unfortunately, when the difference in strength was too great, willpower could become insignificant. Clang, after that particular punch, a sound like glazed tiles breaking was heard. Logan's space armor could no longer withstand the attack and shattered with a loud bang. Zen's fist landed directly on Logan's unprotected chest. A huge force passed through Zen's fist and hit Logan in the chest. Like a falling meteor, Logan's body heavily smashed downwards. The two of them had been fighting in the void and had already moved outside the enchanted barrier. Without the barrier, Logan had smacked into the square. As the martial artists below dodged, he crashed into the ground, creating a huge crater. Due to the strong winds, the rising dust was blown away like smoke. Logan's motionless body lay flat in the huge pit. No one knew whether he was dead or alive. All of the divine-level talents of the 4 divine kingdoms stared blankly at him. It took them a while to accept his current condition, given his display of strength and might before that very fight against Zen. A few divine-level talents from the Harlan and Starfield divine kingdoms had been defeated by Logan. Moreover, his words had affected a lot of martial artists. He was extremely talented, yet quite modest. He had all the qualifications of a warrior who everybody looked up to. He was unrivaled among the warriors in the virtual tribulation realm, and many divine-level talents could attest to that fact. But now, his space armor had been forcefully shattered by Zen's power. He was like a dead animal lying in the pit, and it was safe to say that he had suffered a crushing defeat. "Great, marvelous," Turner exclaimed. Under Logan's suppression, Harlan Divine Kingdom had suffered a lot of humiliation. Although it didn't have an advantage in the past years, the talents of the Divine Kingdom were still able to compete with the others. It had never been defeated so miserably before. However, Zen had saved its reputation. Whether he came from the Harlan Divine Kingdom or not, he passed the Jade Martial House's assessment to become their representative. That was a timely victory. Beaming with immense pride and joy, Randy didn't need to say anything. With Zen's help, his father could be very pleased. Since he was a fair man, Randy's position in his heart should rise up. In the midst of an early celebration, someone was very unhappy. Lightly, Marine's body flashed. She turned into a streak of green light that flew across the plaza and into the large crater. Then, she took out a white medicinal pill from her pouch and stuffed it into Logan's mouth. "Holy Maiden, is he all right?" War Emperor York asked, his face gloomy. The life of a virtual tribulation realm martial artist didn't bother him one bit. However, as the ruler of York Divine Kingdom, he had to show his concern in front of everyone. "His insides have been shattered," Marine said softly while shaking her head. She then coldly looked at Zen, who was in the sky, and said, "Little monster, fight for me. Kill him." Since Marine had an outstanding position in their kingdom, she could select candidates to represent her in battles. Hearing her words, Zen was slightly surprised. Little monster, who was he? At that point, a shrill voice suddenly rang out, "According to the rules, York Divine Kingdom can't send anyone to battle during this round. It should be Starfield or Wind Divine Kingdom which would send out their fighter." Marine initially knew so, but she was too angry to think and act straight. It pissed her off, but rules were rules. Through gritted teeth, she retorted, "Let's wait for the next round, then." It seemed like Zen was the only one who didn't have a clue who the little monster was. The others knew exactly who the person was. Randy was stunned. He hadn't expected Marine to be so furious as to send the little monster to fight on her behalf. If it happens, will Zen be able to withstand it this time? Randy thought to himself. On the plaza, a thin warrior was sleeping soundly. Unlike the others, he was too enamored with his slumber to care about the battles. Not once did he open his eyes to watch the battles in the sky. It was as if everything that went down around him had nothing to do with him. However, after Marine spoke, he suddenly woke up. There were no whites in his eyes. His eyeballs were pitch black underneath his lids, like two black holes. He looked rather strange. That person was the little monster whom Marine had spoken of. "Marine, you really want me to represent you?" The little monster giggled. His body was extremely peculiar. How he moved was unfamiliar to everyone who had witnessed it. However, in just a blink of an eye, he was right beside Marine. It was a huge taboo to address her by her name in front of so many people. Marine was the holy maiden of the secret sect. Although she hailed from the York Divine Kingdom, her influence spread throughout the entire continent. There were no boundaries to religion. Using the power of the upper world, the secret sect had accepted their followers within the 4 divine kingdoms. That was also the reason why Marine enjoyed such a high status even though she wasn't strong enough. Even War Emperor York himself didn't call her by her first name. Instead, he addressed her as the Holy Maiden. However, that little monster just didn't care. Marine glared at the little monster. If she had any other choice, she really didn't want this fellow to fight in her stead. Within the 4 divine kingdoms, there were countless martial houses. 9 Furnace Martial House was regarded to be the biggest one in the Divine Kingdom continent. The little monster was the strongest cultivator from the 9 Furnace Martial House. As proud as Logan was, he never dared challenge the little monster. The little monster was powerful and unkind. He killed the innocent and indulged in all kinds of debauchery. He killed women after taking advantage of their bodies. In the past few years, at least 800 women had died at his hands. As the Holy Maiden, Marine definitely didn't get a free pass. She was hit on by the little monster more than once. He was not lusting after her beauty at all, but was purely interested in her identity as the Holy Maiden. If it were any other cultivator who showed the slightest bit of evil intentions towards Marine, he would die miserably. Nobody could desecrate the Holy Maiden of the secret sect. However, the little monster was an exception. Once, he openly said that if there was a chance, he definitely wanted Marine to be one of his concubines. As soon as Marine heard his words, she was enraged. The little monster was the most obscene, but she still wasn't able to do anything to him. As the #1 martial house of the Divine Kingdom continent, 9 Furnace Martial House was already close to the level of a 7th grade sect, and the little monster was simply too important to them. His importance wasn't the measure of his strength. That wasn't the case. After all, he was only at the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm. he didn't stand a chance against any mighty warrior of the Soul Sea realm. The Nine Furnace Martial House did not lack life and death realm and Soul Sea realm experts, but they still needed the little monster. It was because of him that the York Divine Kingdom had been so prosperous and the younger generation of martial artists had progressed so fast in the last 30 years. He possessed an extremely special talent. A battle against the little monster was transcendental. Any martial artist that went against him easily fell into a state of epiphany. If a divine-level talent of the virtual tribulation realm was stuck in a bottleneck, breaking through was a walk in the park when he fought with the little monster. In addition, the little monster's talent was not only effective for virtual tribulation realm martial artists. Possible, it could also work for the experts from both life and death and Soul Sea realms. Relatively, the stronger the martial artist was, the weaker the effect was going to be. When one was at the same level as War Emperor York, the effect was minute. No matter what, almost all of the martial artists were drawn to the little monster's magical skill. Even though he was an awful creature by nature, all of the Nine Furnace Martial House still treated him like God. Many of the Soul Sea realm experts in the four divine kingdoms also planned to train the little monster. Currently, he was only at the late stage of virtual tribulation realm, and his talent didn't have much impact on the Soul Sea realm experts. But, what if he were to be cultivated to the Soul Sea realm? Chapter 790, Fiona Huo. War Emperor York, Turner, and even the ruler of the Wind Divine Kingdom all still wanted to further improve their cultivation to a higher level. Limited by the lower world's resources, many of the powerful martial artists of the Soul Sea realm couldn't get past that hurdle. Having such a special talent, the little monster naturally grabbed everyone's attention. To all the divine kingdoms, he was a real treasure. His status gave him the privilege to be so unbridled, doing anything he wanted. No one would dare to give him any problems. Back then, in the York Divine Kingdom, he had taken a fancy to an unsurpassed harlot in a brothel and ended up fighting a talented prince. In a fit of anger, he took the prince's life. The prince was only second to the crown prince, above even Daniel. After he was killed, War Emperor York was utterly furious, but he didn't do anything to the little monster. After a moment of thought, Marine looked at Zen as he floated in the air. With a bite of her lips, she finally replied, "Yes, I want you to fight in my place." No problem. The little monster bared his teeth in a wicked grin. Paired with his strange black pupils, he was the embodiment of a humanoid monster. Rubbing his hands mischievously, he moved closer to Marine and began sniffing. "I want something back." The vile-sounding words gave Marine an awful premonition. The monster must have had some preposterous ideas in mind. "What do you want in return?" Lowering her voice, she asked anyway. Still rubbing his hands together, the monster spoke to her through his life vitality, not letting another soul hear their exchange. Suddenly, Marine's face reddened before she angrily scolded the creature, "Do you have a death wish, little monster?" It wasn't a surprise for him to make such an unbearable request. At the very least, the monster knew well enough to speak of such a taboo secretly through life vitality. If anyone else had heard it, it would have made a great influence on the secret sect. His request was rather simple. He wanted to sleep with her, just once. How could she ever agree to such a request? After getting the hint that she was truly angry, the little monster restrained himself. "It's fine if you don't agree to that request. But the next time the reverse spirit channel opens, if there's anything good released from the upper world, would you let me choose first?" He spoke of the ability of the secret sect. It was also the reason why the four divine kingdoms supported the sect. Even the rulers had to be respectful toward Marine. Only the secret sect could connect with the humans in the upper world. Every few years, the upper world would distribute treasures through the reverse spirit channel. These things, however, weren't given out for free. The secret sect in the upper world hoped that the four divine kingdoms could enter the Feather Holy Sea and pick out the most important things from inside. Normally, after the reverse spirit channel was opened, the four divine kingdoms, rulers would select the treasures first. But it was Marine who had the final say in the treasure distribution. The little monster's request was excessive, but it was still acceptable. After all, the reverse spirit channel didn't only pass down treasures, but many pills for cultivation. Many of the Soul Sea realm masters looked forward to the little monster breaking through to the Soul Sea realm. After some hesitation, she finally nodded. "All right. Good, I'll help you kill him later, then." With that, the monster seemed to ignore the crowd and even Zen above him, and once again found an open space before turning over and falling asleep. Upon hearing the monster's words of agreement, Marine looked up at Zen in the sky, her thin lips curling up into a sneer. "Zen, I said that I would kill you. Even after 3 years, you won't be able to escape, she thought firmly to herself. All the while, Zen remained standing in the air. None of the martial artists came to challenge him, so he had a clear view of the scene on the square. Though Zen's expression remained neutral, he was on guard after witnessing how arrogant the little monster was. Virtual Tribulation Realm martial artists weren't stupid. Many of those who were proud and arrogant weren't just all talk, they were powerful. Marine's sneer made it clear that she was very confident in the little monster's power. After Logan was defeated, it was the Starfield Divine Kingdom or Wind Divine Kingdom's turn to send their martial artists to fight. Both kingdoms remained silent, so no one dares to challenge me, Zen thought. Floating in the air in silence, he was baffled. How should he proceed with the next battle, in that case? There were only 20 to 30 martial artists on the first tier of the 4 divine kingdoms. Among those, Logan was considered the best of the best. Titus, Edwin, Gregory, and the others all suffered a crushing defeat in his hands. There was no doubt about his raw power. Unexpectedly, though, such a strong contender was defeated all too easily by Zen. Witnessing such strength, none of the martial artists was willing to fight him. The difference in strength was too great. Of course, it was not that no one from the younger generation dared to step forward. The strength of many princes and crown princes couldn't be underestimated. They had either inherited some sort of bloodline of talent, cultivated some strange cultivation methods, or had precious treasures and secret techniques under their wing. But how could the royal families fight so easily? Who else wants to challenge that? Turner asked with an evident smirk on his face. At that moment, the War King Wind, who had been silent all the while, finally spoke. Fiona, if you really want to give it a try, then go on and fight him. You can stop when you want to. With that, everyone heard a feminine voice reply, okay, father. In an instant, a woman, her hair long and flowing like a waterfall, walked out from behind the king. Her braided hair reached down to her ankles, looking rather astonishing. She's the young princess of the Wind Divine Kingdom. The royal family is actually going to fight. It's been years since I saw the royal family take part in a fight last time. Generally speaking, they don't, right? In such a situation, where no one else was willing to fight, the princess of the Wind Divine Kingdom actually stepped out. It was something far beyond anyone's expectations. The Wind Divine Kingdom was under the Huo family's rule. This young princess, Fiona Huo, was quite powerful. It was said that she was the most talented martial artist in the royal family. Because of her power, the crown prince in the Wind Divine Kingdom was abolished. Martial artists were always rated by their strength. Although Fiona was a woman, if she could grow strong enough to reach the Soul Sea realm in the future, she could take on the position of War King Wind and become an empress in her own right. In the history of the kingdoms, there hadn't yet been any woman to ascend to the throne. But because of Fiona's strength, people believed she was likely to break that streak and become the very first empress of the 4 kingdoms. But her looks were rather deceiving, she seemed weak and delicate. In fact, her demeanor was quite charming, indeed. As she gently turned around, circles of fire lotuses appeared beneath her feet. Stepping onto those fire flowers, she gracefully floated over. After entering the enchanted barrier, she sweetly smiled, and a faint light began circulating between her eyebrows. I am Fiona Huo. The introduction made Zen's brows shoot up. He didn't expect Fiona to be so polite as a princess. He replied in kind, I am Thad Luo. My father said that it's shameful for a member of the royal family to fight personally. But in my opinion, my father rules the kingdom, not because of his dignity, but his true strength. If he wasn't powerful enough to convince his people, there would be no use in worrying about his image, Fiona carefully explained. Her voice was as soft and gentle as sweet spring water. It was all too comforting to listen to. I couldn't agree more, Zen answered with a nod of his head. All fame was backed by strength. Without strength, it was rootless duckweed and water without a source. A bubble reputation was never even worth mentioning. I wish to spar with you, Fiona said with a graceful smile. I am deeply honored to be able to battle with the princess of the Wind Divine Kingdom, Zen said without hesitation. Initially, Zen believed that they would begin to fight right after their conversation. Much to his surprise, when Fiona saw the sleeping little monster in the square, a trace of fear flashed across her face. She then said to Zen, lowering her voice, listen, after our fight, everything will be fine if you lose. However, if you defeat me, you must pretend to have lost to me. Chapter 791, The Powerful Princess. Oh, why is that? Zen asked with a strange expression. Fiona's face was filled with worry. If you defeat me, the little monster will definitely challenge you. He's a madman, a true madman. He'll kill you, she told Zen. He smiled at her words. She was truly worried about him given the seriousness in her tone. Fiona was indeed a pure, kind-hearted princess. Only under the protection of the royal family would someone like her grow up to be a powerful and pure martial artist. Zen appreciated her goodwill. Thank you for your concern. I know what to do. Fiona knew Zen was a person who wouldn't listen to other people's advice. She nodded and said, all right. I'll be making my move. Be careful. Zen was rendered speechless at how nice Fiona was. She actually reminded him before she launched her attack. She was modest and obedient, but her next actions caused Zen's expression to change. Fiona raised her hand, revealing a red jade bracelet that emitted so much power. Zen felt his heart palpitate. His eyes widened as he stared at the bracelet. What treasure is this? Noticing the intrigued look in his eyes, Fiona temporarily halted her attack. It was a gift from my father, she answered. Her words rendered Zen speechless along with many of the martial artists in the square. It was absurd but also funny. Fiona was really just too nice. Instead of launching her attack, she actually stopped to answer her opponent's question. Ah, she's so cute. She is the Wind Divine Kingdom's princess. Don't get any ideas. HMPH, don't look down on her. Even if she tells you all her weaknesses, you're still no match for her. She may be innocent but her strength is unfathomable. Even War King Wind's face had an awkward expression. Your daughter is impressive, Turner said. She's also very cute. There was a slight buzz of discussion in the crowd regarding Fiona's actions. However, her next words rendered them silent. I like this bracelet very much. It's a semi-divine weapon, she said, gently stroking the bracelet with her hand. A semi-divine weapon, even that shocked Zen. There were certain levels when it came to weapons. A spiritual weapon, a fairy weapon, a sacred weapon, and lastly, at the zenith, a divine weapon. What Zen possessed right now was his long sword, which was a top-grade sacred weapon. But a divine weapon? He briefly wondered what that would look like since he had never seen one before. He previously speculated that the Divine Kingdoms possessed a divine weapon. Fiona's words had served to confirm Zen's speculations. A semi-divine weapon should be very close to a divine weapon given its superiority against a top-grade sacred weapon. Everyone's eyes were trained on that red bracelet. It wasn't a secret that the 4 divine kingdoms possessed divine weapons, however, these were considered treasures that laid down the foundation of a kingdom. These types of weapons would rarely be shown to the public. For one to see a true divine weapon in person was impossible under normal circumstances. So it was understandable for the warriors to be intrigued by this semi-divine weapon. Be careful of that bracelet, a voice whispered in his mind. Lavender was wary of the bracelet's power. Ever since Zen had entered the Divine Kingdom, he had concealed his strength and prevented Lavender from leaving his body. However, the bracelet was frightening enough for her to make her presence known in his mind. Don't worry, I will, he told her. Even without her reminder, Zen was determined to be vigilant in this fight. All right then, I'll make a move now, for real this time. She waved her white wrist and the bracelet began to vibrate. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Scarlet flames burst from Fiona's hand and engulfed her entire arm as if her appendage had been made of flames. It's at least the 3rd layer of fire law. Zen's eyes flashed. Fiona quickly took a step forward and suddenly disappeared. Zen was taken aback for a few seconds until she appeared once again, the distance between the two of them shorter than earlier. Space law. No, this is the time law. Fiona practiced 2 laws. Not only that, but her comprehension is also very high. Far beyond Camilla's. Her movements were very similar to Zen's space traveling, however, it was only a visual effect. Fiona froze time whenever she drew closer to Zen, thus giving him no time to react. He would be lying if he said he wasn't afraid now that he knew that his opponent had a semi-divine weapon and was a master of 2 laws. One truly shouldn't judge a book by its cover. Fiona might have been cute but her strength was unparalleled. Even Logan, who was supposedly invincible among virtual Tribulation Realm warriors, would be no match. Zen knew when to pick his battles and for this one, he chose to retreat. The time law was even more terrifying compared to the space law. With space law, Zen would be able to travel through space and instantly close the gap between him and his opponent. This made it hard for his opponent to dodge his attacks, but it still gave his opponent a chance to react. Fiona's time law was different. She was able to compress the time flow and, within a certain range, control it to make it impossible for Zen to predict her movements. How could he ever hope to fight against her? There was no going around this dilemma. The only way he could win this was to comprehend time law as well. In the blink of an eye, this conclusion had come to Zen's mind. In fact, he was right. There were many martial artists in the upper world who practiced the time law. Only the time law was able to resist the time law, but a high-level space law might also be able to resist low-level time law. When the power of these laws reached the higher levels, there could potentially be earth-shattering consequences. There was no way Zen would be able to restrain Fiona's time law, at least, for now. Next thing he knew, Fiona was already beside him, her flaming arm ready to come down his head. There was simply no time for Zen to react, but, just as she was about to attack, Fiona stopped halfway, which greatly surprised the crowd. "It'll hurt a bit if I knock you out, but it won't injure you too badly." Her hesitation gave him time to escape. Zen traveled through space and put some distance between him and Fiona. He had a grim expression on his face. He was able to dodge only because of her warning, however, he knew he was only delaying the inevitable attack. He has escaped, but nobody could escape time. Fiona was a bit disappointed. She saw her warning as an extension of goodwill, but he actually took it as an opportunity to dodge. She thought he was being crafty, but really it was because she was simply too kind-hearted. Still, she wasn't too bothered. She possessed the power of time law, so she could always just catch him again. Fiona once again focused on changing time flow within a several hundred feet radius. Their surroundings had slowed and Zen felt as if he was moving in slow motion. She appeared in front of him once again, her flaming palm ready to strike him down. "I won't remind you this time," Fiona thought to herself. Of course, her kind-hearted nature still won her over. Instead of unleashing her full strength, she only used around 70% of her power since she didn't want to kill Zen. Chapter 792, Please Admit Defeat. As a princess of Wind Divine Kingdom, Fiona rarely had a chance to showcase her true strength. The imperial families of the 4 divine kingdoms all had their own secret training grounds, some of which were built using methods from the upper world. Never had Fiona competed with anyone in public, everyone had only judged her strength from her position in the Wind Divine Kingdom. No one truly knew of Fiona's cultivation method, nor the laws she had comprehended. Though they all knew her to be strong, they never expected her to be this powerful. Faced against her, Zen had no way to fight back. Even though she had only used 70% of her power with that strike, the bracelet on her wrist slightly shook before vibrating intensely, releasing a great force. Puff! A sound like a watermelon being crushed reverberated. After that, Zen's figure suddenly fell and crashed straight into the enchanted barrier. Fortunately, it was set up by a mighty warrior at the Soul Sea realm. When he made impact, the barrier twisted and caved in, but the eyes of that mighty warrior flashed and he instantly restored it. If it were any other warrior on the receiving end of that strike, it would have been difficult for him to stand back up. Zen, however, had the fairy weapon's physique. As soon as the huge force entered his body, it turned into primordial energy that let his body recover. Since his body had been refined into a fairy weapon, he never had the chance to refine it further. The fairy weapon's physique was still not enough to use against a warrior as mighty as Fiona. Even as he tried his best, he could only manage to convert 70% of the force into primordial energy, letting the rest do him damage. Still, he was able to withstand it, sustaining only minor injuries. In his current physical condition, at least, it took mere seconds for him to recover. Fiona's white and blue gown swayed in the wind. When she looked down at Zen, her expression filled with worry, as did her heart. Even though she held back, she thought the hit might have still been too much for him. But in the blink of an eye, her worries were dispelled. A smile of relief replaced her expression of worry as she watched Zen jump up from the enchanted barrier. "This little girl is really kind as a saint," Zen sighed inwardly. You've taken a fancy to her." Of course, Lavender didn't miss the opportunity to make such a remark. Without a word, Zen smiled. Immediately ascending to the top, he met Fiona's eyes. "It's done," Fiona suddenly shouted, turning to Zen. The exclamation stunned him momentarily. "What's done?" At that moment, Fiona revealed a rather strange expression. In a daze, she said, "Isn't the competition over? Didn't I win?" Upon hearing her, all the other warriors wore a strange expression, looking at each other questioningly. A moment after, the entire crowd burst into laughter, save for the warriors of the Wind Divine Kingdom, who held the princess in their hearts as if she was some kind of goddess. Even for the many powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm, smiles were also surfaced on their faces. "This girl is so innocent," they all thought to themselves. A helpless smile appeared on War King Wind's face. He could only blame himself for this matter. Ever since discovering her talent, he had spoiled his daughter way too much, never letting her go off alone. Of course, just because she had never trained alone, it didn't mean that she wasn't working hard. Many of her years were spent on cultivation, almost completely disregarding any other leisure activity. Her personality was still that of a young girl. Indeed, she was kind and naive, while possessing terrifying strength and talent. The competition isn't over yet, Zen replied in a grave tone. Fiona's relieved expression turned into one of confusion. But you just lost to me. As Zen smiled, his face seemed to have a sense of craftiness about it. He said playfully, but I haven't given up yet. After a blink of her eyes, she murmured, huh, I see. In other words, you have to admit defeat. I understand now. Indeed, she was innocent, but that did not make her a fool. In her opinion, Zen had just lost. This was just a spar. There was no need for them to risk their lives and fight each other to the death. Now that the situation was clear to her, she had only one thought in her mind: she must make Zen admit defeat. As soon as they finished speaking, her dress fluttered in the wind. Leaning her body forward, like a fairy, she flew toward Zen. Simultaneously, the bracelet on her wrist began vibrating as the time law began spreading from her arm. The bracelet was not used for attacking, but it had the ability to increase her strength and life vitality to a certain extent. The moment the time law spread, Zen was already ready to reflexively retreat. Unfortunately, the time law spread impossibly fast. And because the space within the enchanted barrier wasn't large enough to begin with, there wasn't much of a chance for Zen to escape. As he was enveloped by the time law, Zen's figure became incomparably slow. Although he had already found a nearby space node, he was stuck to where he was by the time law just as he was going for it. Holy garbage! Under the effects of the time law, even Zen's mind began to run slow. Though he could see Fiona rapidly approaching him with a seemingly heightened speed, he didn't have much of a choice. As Fiona approached Zen once again, her delicate eyebrows knitted together in frustration. To make him admit defeat, she had to completely defeat him. Fighting was not something she liked. However, Fiona understood that she was a representative of the Wind Divine Kingdom, and she belonged to its imperial family. Not wanting to lose the battle, she was left with no choice but to raise her power again. I'll have to use 90% of my strength this time. As she thought of it, her jade-like hand was already going for Zen's forehead. Though the pat looked extremely gentle, as if she was merely stroking his head, Zen had to be thankful that his body was as tough as a monster's. No warrior could underestimate her strength. If it were any other warrior in front of her, his or her head would have been completely crushed in an instant. Even with the body of a fairy weapon, he still felt dizzy to the point that he saw stars. Puff! Once again, Zen's body crashed into the enchanted barrier. Under Fiona's time law, Zen fell incredibly slowly. After she removed the time law, his speed increased astonishingly, and he smashed hard into the enchanted barrier below. Will you admit defeat this time? Fiona asked with a deep frown. No, I won't. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, he shouted, I won't admit defeat. Then come face me again. With that, Fiona appeared instantly in front of Zen. As the bracelet on her wrist trembled, her lily-white hand lightly brushed past him and Zen's body charged into the sky within the enchanted barrier. This time, Fiona had used 100% of her strength. Do you admit defeat? As she asked once again, she was turning extremely intolerable. It was as though taking Zen down was making her extremely uncomfortable. Puff! This time, Zen rushed directly toward the left. Once again, blood spurted from his mouth. Do you admit defeat? Fiona asked again, sounding rather pleading. No, he replied indifferently, looking up at her. Never did she think such a fighter existed in this world. His stubbornness was making her truly anxious at this point. Even though he was clearly no match for her, he endured with sheer willpower. After a moment, she suddenly opened her mouth and pleaded, I'm begging you, just admit defeat. She didn't want to kill Zen, but he refused to admit defeat no matter how hard she struck. To other warriors, it was a simple matter, they would simply kill him. To Fiona, however, it was an impossible hurdle. Chapter 793, Comprehend the Time Law. At that moment, War King Wind, who had been watching the battle closely with his full attention, suddenly let out a long sigh. This is a trial for Fiona, he thought to himself. Fiona had never gone out to practice and gain experience through real-life fights, but that didn't mean she had never fought anyone. Ever since she had stepped into the nature level, her father had arranged for opponents to challenge her one after the other. Once Fiona was able to defeat an opponent of the same level as her own, he would arrange for stronger opponents. And she did not disappoint him. Once she had reached the 3rd grade of nature level, she was already strong enough to defeat a warrior at the 7th grade of nature level. When she reached the 10th grade of nature level, she gained enough strength and experience to defeat an opponent at the 7th grade of the illuminating soul realm. From that moment onwards, she basically became capable of defeating any warrior whose cultivation level was an entire realm above hers. Now, since she had entered the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm, she could easily deal with a warrior at the 2nd grade of life and death realm. In fact, it wouldn't be too surprising if she managed to outwit a warrior at the 3rd grade of that realm too. However, these battles had all been prearranged just to train Fiona, and the players in such battles would stop before they hurt their opponent for real. She was a princess of Wind Divine Kingdom, and even if War King Wind wanted the warriors he called in to go all out, who would dare to harm her? This kind of experiential learning, after all, did not put her on the border of life and death. Facing Zen now was also a big test for Fiona. War King Wind hoped that his beloved daughter would make the right decision, so that he wouldn't lose too much face. Zen didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he heard Fiona begging him to admit defeat. However, as a warrior, giving up was not an option. After laughing for a moment, he replied, "I won't admit defeat even if you beg me." Fiona was at a loss as to what to do next. She looked around searching for someone else's advice. When her gaze landed on her father, he closed his eyes. As a concerned father who wanted her to make her own way in the world, he did not want to give his daughter any hints at this point in time. Of course, since he did not say anything, numerous other warriors came up with some ideas of their own. As the many warriors of the Wind God Kingdom saw the expression on Fiona's face, they began to shout out loud. "Your Highness, you can just kill him. This brat doesn't know how to appreciate favors. You showed him mercy, but he didn't appreciate it at all. Just kill him and be done with it." Kill him. Fiona bit her lips and quickly stopped herself from pondering over such an idea. Ever since she could remember being herself, she hadn't even killed an ant. When she had reached the nature level, she could feel the existence of every single living thing in the world. When she walked on grass, she would be extremely careful, fearing that she would step too hard on the grass and hurt it. If there were ants or grasshoppers on the road, she would carefully avoid them as well. How could she be expected to kill someone now? Even if she herself was going to be killed, she wouldn't be able to do it. Her mental strength was still too weak to take such a powerful decision. As she panicked, her eyes reddened and crystal-clear tears began to roll down her cheeks. Seeing this scene, the numerous divine-level talents of Wind Divine Kingdom felt their hearts shatter. These people were her admirers and wanted to impress her. How could they possibly tolerate someone making her cry? At that moment, almost all of them began to hate Zen. "Thad Luo, you are not a match for the princess at all. Don't be a scoundrel, just admit defeat. Be a man, don't act so shamelessly, you're embarrassing all of us. Hurry up and admit defeat. If you don't admit defeat, I will definitely kill you." All of a sudden, the warriors of Wind Divine Kingdom began to clamor. Just then, the little monster, who had been sleeping soundly till now, suddenly turned around and roared at these divine-level talents. "Stop making such a fuss. I am trying to sleep here. You disturbed my sweet dreams. Hey, girl, what's your name? I can't remember it. Anyway, if you don't want to kill him, then just knock him out. You are such a silly woman. This is so simple." The roar of the little monster had angered the masses. Although he was very powerful, he could not fight against so many divine-level talents of the Wind Divine Kingdom. Therefore, everyone who had been roared at just now could not help talking back. However, the little monster's suggestion did make some sense and silenced these divine-level talents. "That's right, I didn't think of that. Your Highness, just knock out Thad Luo. Knock him out, and you will win." Fiona's eyes lit up at this suggestion. She might not be able to kill Zen, but she could still barely knock him out. Therefore, she smiled faintly at Zen. "Since you're so adamant on not admitting defeat, then I'm sorry, I have to knock you out." When they heard Fiona's charming voice, every single person from the audience was immediately attracted to her. If such a beautiful woman was accompanied by such a voice, then she would be a fatal attraction to any man of any age. This time, Fiona gently floated forward and followed the same pattern. She used the time law to reduce the time flow rate around her. Zen still looked as defenseless as ever. He stood there in a daze as he watched Fiona approach him at an imperceptible speed. The princess circled behind Zen as she began her plan of knocking him out. Her jade-like hand suddenly turned into a knife as it chopped towards the back of Zen's head. However, just as she was closing in on Zen, something happened. Zen's movements, which had originally been sluggish like a snail's under the influence of Fiona's time law, suddenly sped up quite a bit. Although his speed couldn't keep up with Fiona's, it was enough for him to protect the back of his head. Therefore, Fiona's palm strike landed on Zen's arm. Puff! Zen was like a ball as he was sent flying forward once again. This time, because of his protection, he was not injured. With a smile on his face, he shook his aching arm and returned to normal. Huh! Fiona's face revealed a strange expression. Your movements just now. They were so quick, how is that possible? She had completely comprehended the first layer of time law, and was able to adjust the time flow rate within a circumference of 100 feet. Using her powers, she could slow down time within that radius. A second of time passed in the outside world, but 100 seconds passed within the area under the time law. This was also the reason why Zen's speed had become as slow as a snail. After having been slowed down 100 times, no matter how fast Zen tried to be, his movements were still extremely slow compared to his opponent. That being the case, how was he able to block Fiona's attack? Just now, he had not only protected the back of his head, but his speed had also increased tenfold. It was as if Zen had forcibly increased his speed by 10 times. This was impossible, and it wasn't because the time law had been stopped, because Fiona could feel that there was still traces of it in the air around her. But it hadn't been released by her. You've comprehended the time law. Just now, Fiona had a stunned expression on her face. The War King, War Emperor, and many powerful warriors at the Soul Sea realm were also wearing shocked expressions on their faces. They had clearly seen what had happened just now, and whatever it was, it should have been impossible. Zen had been continuously beaten up and had no way of fighting back. This wasn't to say that he wasn't strong enough, but that the time law was too strong. With the time law in place, the advantage of fighting a warrior at the same level was unimaginably great. Zen should have lost to Fiona very easily. Therefore, Turner thought that even if Zen was defeated by Fiona, he would still protect him. At the same time, Turner was curious about why Zen didn't admit defeat. Perhaps he is afraid that if he loses, the Harlan Divine Kingdom would abandon him and let him fall into the hands of War Emperor York, Turner thought. He even wanted to tell Zen with his life vitality that he would still protect him even if he lost to Fiona. After all, she had comprehended the time law, and Turner didn't believe that Zen could win. In fact, no one did. And since Zen had been severely beaten by Fiona just now, Turner was feeling a bit pitiful. Just as Turner was about to stop Zen, he saw Zen dodge her attack. Now, Turner understood what Zen was doing. This guy had actually comprehended Fiona's time law while he was fighting her. What was even more terrifying was that he seemed to have comprehended quite a few of it. War King Win took a deep breath and then said, "We all know very well how difficult it is to comprehend the time law. I want to know whether this kid has really comprehended it during the battle just now, or was he already accomplished at it?" Scott, War Emperor York, Turner, as well as numerous other warriors at the Soul Sea realm, were all immersed in deep thought. Time law was one of the most difficult laws to comprehend. It was several times more difficult than the space law, and not a single person from the audience believed that Zen would be able to comprehend it through the time law power that Fiona had displayed in such a short period of time. Chapter 794. Zen's speed of comprehending time law. It wasn't that these powerful masters of the Soul Sea realm didn't believe it, but they found it hard to accept that Zen had actually been learning the time law from Fiona. The time law of the 4 divine kingdoms was recorded on a totem. And the totem wasn't something that belonged to the lower world but was passed down from the upper world through the reverse spirit channel of the secret sect. But this particular totem wasn't sought after a lot. In comparison, the totems that carried the 3rd and 4th layers of fire law, and those that carried the ice, metal, and thunder laws were much more popular. The reason was simply because it was too difficult to comprehend the time law. They didn't know what the situation in the upper world was like. But there were no more than 100 warriors in the entirety of the 4 divine kingdoms who could comprehend the time law. For example, the female martial artist who had followed Randy, Camilla, didn't have any great talents in other aspects. But because she had comprehended 10% of the first layer of the time law, she had been able to reach the top of the 2nd tier. Fiona's talent was good enough, but it took her 7 years just to completely comprehend the first layer of the time law. It had taken her only 19 years to reach the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm. But it had taken her 7 years just to comprehend the time law alone. Because of how difficult it was to comprehend the time law, and also because it took too long a time, many martial artists usually gave up trying to study the time law from the totem. Some other warriors wanted to try their luck comprehending the time law on the totem, but they ended up discovering that they didn't have any talent in this aspect. So they also eventually gave up. The time law was indeed powerful. It frustrated many warriors who achieved nothing despite having spent so much time trying to comprehend it. Of course, there were people with great perseverance in the Divine Kingdom continent. There was once a martial artist at the Illuminating Soul Realm, a prince of the Starfield Divine Kingdom with divine-level talent. He was obsessed with studying the time law, and after spending a full 563 years on it, he had finally comprehended 60% of the first layer of the law. Since he had spent too much time studying the time law, he had only been able to reach the primary stage of the internal elixir realm after becoming over 500 years of age. He had finally died when he had reached the end of his lifespan. There were only two types of people that cultivated the time law on the Divine Kingdom continent. The first type was the martial artists who had a very strong affinity to the time law. Even in the Divine Kingdoms where many talents usually gathered, there was only a small number of such talented martial artists. And in the younger generation, only Fiona was gifted in comprehending the time law. The other type was the mighty warriors at the Soul Sea realm. Since they had already reached such a high level, they had nothing else to do. And since they couldn't ascend to the upper world, they could only cultivate various laws or explore continents and lands abroad. They could take advantage of their long lifespans and spend 1,000 years comprehending it. They could do it even if they didn't have a great affinity to the time law. That was why the powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm couldn't accept what they saw. It had only been about 5 minutes since Zen had fought with Fiona. How had he changed the time flow rate by 10 times within such a short span of time? It was inconceivable. The little monster, who was not previously interested in the fight, woke up at this moment. Perhaps the only fight that could pique his interest was the one between the powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm. It was quite obvious that the battle between virtual Tribulation realm warriors was nothing to him. His strange-looking black eyes glittered as he gazed upon the scene before him. Your talent is extraordinary. If I devour you and take your talent, wouldn't I become more powerful? The little monster thought, sticking out his tongue and licking the tip of his nose. The little monster's eyes weren't his only strange features. His tongue was like the tongue of a snake, split open in the middle and incredibly long, reaching his nose when he stuck it out. But there was another great secret about this little monster, one that had always been kept highly confidential among the senior leaders of the 4 divine kingdoms. This little monster liked to devour human brains, and as a consequence, he could take their talent as his own. Many powerful warriors of the Soul Sea realm knew the little monster's secret very well. The stronger the little monster was, the more he would spread out his talent, which would benefit the warriors who dueled with him. This meant that the warriors who dueled with the little monster would easily enter a state of epiphany and make a breakthrough. All these years, the 4 divine kingdoms had secretly sacrificed many second-tier talents. They had offered these talents to this little monster, who would promptly swallow them. This would occasionally result in the sudden disappearance of 1 or 2 divine-level talents from the martial houses of the 4 divine kingdoms. But the Divine Kingdom continent was so vast that it was difficult for anyone to notice these disappearances. So far, no one had realized this. Zen smiled faintly as he looked at Fiona. He then took out his space ring and gently tossed it into the air. The ring flew 3 feet above Zen's head, and as he spread out his fingers, a wave of power from the time law surged out. A strange scene played out. The ring seemed to fall at such a slow speed that it felt like time had stopped, and it finally landed on his hand. Your talent is amazing, Fiona exclaimed as she saw this. You managed to compress time by such a large margin. 10 times. And in such a short time. Back when I was comprehending the time law, it took me 3 years to achieve this. Zen had experienced baptism by laws and had the highest level of affinity with all laws. So he could comprehend any law in no time. A few months ago, when Zen had fought Camilla, he had tried to comprehend the time law from her. However, the time law that Camilla had mastered was too little, causing Zen to fail in his attempt. Previously, Zen had tried to find out where Camilla had cultivated the time law. Later on, he learned that the totem which carried the time law was currently placed in the Wind Divine Kingdom and had always been with the royal family, which meant that Zen had no chance to comprehend the time law through the totem. So when Zen saw that Fiona had mastered the complete power of the time law, he knew that he couldn't possibly let such a good chance slip by. Zen smiled and merely asked, "Shall we continue?" Fiona's slender eyebrows shot up. But she recovered and said, "Okay. But don't get carried away. You have only compressed time by 10 times, and I can already compress time by 100 times. My absolute speed is still 10 times faster than yours." As she finished speaking, she waved her jade bracelet around lightly, causing the power of the time law to spread out once again. Zen knew the gap in the mastery of time law between him and Fiona, but he didn't agree that she was 10 times faster than him. If both of them didn't use the power of the time law, then Zen could use his full strength to make his forceful energy and life vitality burst out at the same time. And together with the boost from the cloud-chasing lion's talent, Zen would be twice as fast as Fiona. Once the difference in the time law between them would be offset, Fiona's absolute speed would only be 5 times faster than Zen's. Zen could accept such a difference. Whoosh! Fiona's expression became more serious by the minute. Although she was an innocent and naive girl, she was way too serious about the cultivation of martial arts, more than anyone else. After all, just relying on one's talent wasn't enough for one to succeed in the pursuit of martial arts. Without strong will, perseverance, passion and seriousness, one wouldn't be able to walk too far on this path. Fiona's figure flashed and once again darted behind Zen. Zen's speed was still relatively, extremely slow, but it was much faster than before. Poof! This time, Fiona thumped Zen heavily on his back. Zen twisted his body and used his elbow to block Fiona's attack. Bam! A muffled sound rang out as Zen felt the breath whoosh out of him. But since he had been prepared in a defensive position, he wasn't injured. A crackling tension filled the air, filling the atmosphere within the enchanted barrier with an unparalleled intensity. Fiona constantly struck out her palm. It was true that she had a considerable advantage in speed, but Zen had combat experience that Fiona couldn't compare with. He could always predict what would happen in advance and defend himself against Fiona's attack even before it happened. What was more astonishing was that not only was Zen able to block Fiona's attack, the speed with which he was comprehending the time law was also rapidly increasing. By the time Zen had blocked 13 strikes from Fiona, he had already been able to compress time by about 11 times. And by the time Fiona had struck Zen 20 times, Zen had already been able to compress time by about 12 times. Everything was difficult at the beginning. As Zen gained more insights into the first layer of the time law, his speed of comprehending the time law increased in leaps and bounds. A powerful master at the Soul Sea realm figured out what was happening and shook his head. Fiona would be in a pickle, he thought. Chapter 795, A Genuine Phoenix Descendant. War King Wind and Turner along with the mighty warriors at the Soul Sea realm were all observing this spectacle. Without the use of the time law, the speed difference between Fiona and Zen was huge. But the main thing to note was that while Fiona had the advantage of speed, she wasn't able to deal with Zen. His body was just too strong. He was simply too domineering. As long as he continued to resist, his comprehension of the time law would become increasingly better. In the end, Fiona would be the one to lose. Oh, no, said a distressed Fiona. She could feel the change in Zen's speed. He was getting faster and faster. Overall, he was still 4 times slower than her, but the gap was rapidly shrinking. She didn't want to lose to Zen, she really didn't want to. So after attacking him with her palm, she didn't attack again. Instead, her slim and graceful body floated to a corner of the enchanted barrier. Thad, give up, she called to Zen. Why, Zen had no idea what this little girl was thinking, but he was probably used to it. It takes all kinds of people to make the world. 2 people's personalities can be completely different. Zen learned this principle from Margaret's character. I'm going to use fire. If you can't block this move, I'm afraid you'll die, Fiona said earnestly. Fire. Zen raised his eyebrows slightly. His primordial energy had been accumulating in his body ever since he had refined his body last time. Now it was time for him to refine his body again and advance it to the next level. However, all this time, Zen had been unable to find a suitable fire source. Zen himself didn't know what kind of fire source would be able to help him advance to the next level, but the stronger his body became, the more powerful the fire source he would need. He did possess a powerful fire source. It was the black flame within the mysterious furnace. But the black flame was far too overbearing. He did not dare to try it out rashly. Fiona was proficient in not only time law but also fire law. If Zen could borrow the power of her flames to help his body become a sacred weapon, it would be great. Yes, Fiona nodded. So you should give up. Don't force me to use it. I can't knock you out right now, and your speed of comprehending the time law is high. I'm afraid that before long, you'll be able to completely comprehend the time law. By then I won't be your match. She was actually explaining all of this to Zen bit by bit. The divine level talents at Virtual Tribulation Realm sighed. These divine level talents were so powerful that they were considered monstrous on their own territory. They were absolutely proud. But compared to Zen, their pride was nothing. This was simply too much of a blow to them. Zen had comprehended the time law so fast that the term, monstrous was not enough to describe him. The only explanation I can think of is that this guy is not human. Someone said angrily. If he isn't human, then what is he? Someone else asked. An animal, a beast. This seemed to be the only explanation for Zen's achievement. Zen, on the other hand, refused to budge. Fiona gritted her teeth. Surrender. I beg of you, I don't want to use that move, she pleaded desperately. This was the second time that she had begged him. Zen shook his head and smiled faintly. I'm very sorry, but by begging me like this, you've really put me in a difficult situation. I'm afraid I have to refuse. I can agree to many things, but surrendering is not one of them. Fiona pouted sullenly. All the martial artists looked at her with equal parts of affection and anger. They loved Fiona, but they were angry at Zen, who had turned down their goddess. All he needs to do is admit defeat. What's the big deal? Then you leave me no choice. Fiona sniffed and raised her right hand high. The fiery red jade bracelet moved back and forth on her slender wrist. As she raised her hand, the jade bracelet slid down her wrist all the way until it reached her elbow. Only after reaching her bicep did it stop. Then, her hands got clasped together. Every time Fiona activated her life vitality, the jade bracelet would rapidly vibrate. As it was on her arm right now, her entire body started shaking. She shook violently. It was so fast that all you could see was a hazy outline of her figure. The jade bracelet began turning a brilliant fiery red color. Seeing this, many of the Soul Sea Realm experts from Wind Divine Kingdom turned to look at their emperor, War King Wind. He looked completely calm, but the Soul Sea Realm experts were anxious. One of them couldn't hold it in any longer and asked, "My king, are you not going to stop her?" A complex expression crept on War King Wind's face. To be fair, he did not wish for Fiona to use that move. However, this time, he steeled his heart, because he had pampered her too much in the past. That was why she was so immature. Even the eagle knows when to push the eaglet off the cliff to train it. As the emperor of a kingdom, couldn't he do the same? So he had decided to let Fiona make her own decision regarding that. As long as her life wasn't in danger, he would no longer stop her. Forget it, it's up to her, War King Wind replied. The other powerful warriors of the Soul Sea Realm didn't have anything to say after this. As the flames on the jade bracelet around Fiona's arm became increasingly bright, a deep imprint appeared on her forehead and a surge of energy seeped out of it. Genuine Phoenix Fire, come out. Right on cue, a condensed Phoenix Phantom appeared behind her. The people at the plaza felt an intense heat wave. The powerful warriors of the Soul Sea Realm managed to weaken the force of the heat wave by casting an enchanted barrier, but it was still hard for them to block it. Many virtual Tribulation Realm warriors had to condense their protective life vitality to combat the heat wave. Does Fiona have the genuine Phoenix bloodline? Is she a descendant of the Phoenix race? Yelled someone. The concentration of her bloodline is ridiculously high. It's very likely that she's a descendant of the Phoenix race. Zen's eyebrows shot up when he saw the slowly congealing flames. Once Zen had absorbed the blood as well as the blood essence of genuine dragons. They were very good for the refinement of his body. However, he had only absorbed a few drops of them. So he did not have much of them in his body, and more importantly, he hadn't absorbed enough genuine dragon blood, so he had not yet mastered the theurgy of the genuine dragons. But Fiona seemed to be the true descendant of a super legendary beast. Her blood density was ridiculously high, and the genuine Phoenix Phantom had actually been condensed to such a degree. When Zen was at the Cloud Sect, he had learned that Tracy possessed the Blue Phoenix bloodline. However, the Blue Phoenix could not compare to a super legendary beast, and was far inferior to genuine dragons and genuine phoenixes. Fiona was different, though. She seemed to have a complete genuine Phoenix bloodline. From between her eyebrows, streams of flames surged out. The flames condensed continuously and slowly fused together to form a phoenix. The phoenix formed by Fiona was different from the one Letitia had created. Letitia's ice phoenix was just an illusion, while this one seemed to be a real phoenix. Chapter 796, Sun Flame Attack. Like normal beasts, super legendary beasts were also divided into different levels. A 9th level fierce beast would be equivalent to a human warrior at Virtual Tribulation Realm, a 10th level one would be equivalent to a human warrior at Life and Death Realm, and an 11th level one would be equivalent to a mighty warrior at the Soul Sea Realm. Regardless whether the beasts were super legendary or normal fierce ones, once they reached 11th level, their demon cores would liquefy, allowing them to open up a new world. Despite that, there was still a great disparity between a fierce beast and a legendary beast and a super legendary beast. A super legendary beast, such as a genuine dragon or a genuine phoenix, would have a far superior growing speed and special talents over an ordinary legendary beast or a fierce beast. Like the super talents in the human race, they could also challenge opponents who were levels above them with ease. We have contracted an alliance by the use of my spirit and my soul. The genuine phoenix named Fiery Shine, listen to my commands, and follow me. At that moment, Fiona's voice suddenly became extremely authoritative. The genuine phoenix which went by the name of Fiery Shine was Fiona's contractual beast. The stronger the cultivator was, the stronger his or her contractual beast would be. Fiona was only at the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm, but she was already able to have such a beast under her command. Even in the upper world, it was extremely rare for someone to have a genuine phoenix as a contractual beast. Much like the genuine dragon race, the number of genuine phoenixes in the genuine phoenix race was extremely small. For instance, the genuine dragon world had 49 fully grown genuine dragons. If you counted the young ones, its total number would still be less than 1,000. Despite that the genuine phoenixes generally outnumbered the genuine dragons, they still would not break 10,000 in number. That, coupled with the fact that there were trillions of warriors in the upper world, one would realize that to have a genuine phoenix as one's contractual beast was not an easy feat to achieve. Perhaps only the descendants of supreme lords would have such a privilege. The strength that Fiona had displayed had the mighty masters of Soul Sea Realm impressed and amazed. The little girl from the Huo clan had grown to such a powerful warrior without anyone noticing. When they saw her contractual beast, Fiery Shine, their eyes widened so much to the point that it seemed like their eyes would pop out. Nothing could relay the astonishment they felt at that moment. War King Wind, you have really hid your secret well. War Emperor York coldly ridiculed. Whatever happened, the 4 divine kingdoms were on the same boat. Because of that, they didn't keep too many secrets from each other. For instance, the secret of that little monster from the 9 Furnace Martial House was shared by the several war emperors and war kings. Despite that, War King Wind had trained such a character without disclosing it to anyone. Perhaps Fiona's current strength wasn't enough to threaten anyone from the divine kingdoms, but what if she and her genuine phoenix matured in the future? What would happen if this genuine phoenix reached the 11th level? Perhaps none of the Soul Sea Realm masters was able to be its match then. With the veil of secrecy lifted over Fiona and her strong contractual beast, the 3 other kings couldn't help but feel betrayed. They started to think how many secrets War King Wind was hiding, and whether he could still be trusted. Turning to War Emperor York, War King Wind subtly smiled and calmly said, "Lucian, don't be so ridiculous. If I wanted to intentionally hide Fiona, I wouldn't have allowed her to participate in this battle." What he said was the truth. From the beginning to the end, War King Wind had not given Fiona any hints. He just let her fight the battle in any way she wanted. Even if Fiona chose to summon her contractual beast, he did nothing to stop her. Hearing this, the faces of the several rulers of the Divine Kingdom softened. Despite that they had felt distrust towards War King Wind, they realized that Fiona having a genuine phoenix as a contractual beast was actually a good thing for the entire Divine Kingdom continent. The warriors' growth in the Divine Kingdom continent was limited. No one could rebuild the passageway leading to the upper world. Therefore, all the mighty masters at the Soul Sea Realm would eventually die here. However, there was no limit to the growth of a genuine phoenix. If this genuine phoenix was given a chance to fully grow, there might be a chance to rebuild the passageway leading to the upper world. "Oh!" The genuine phoenix named Fiery Shine suddenly let out a high-pitched cry and circled around Fiona. It then rose up from behind Fiona, spreading out its 12 feet wide wings. It looked directly at Zen, its eyes full of power. Its feathers, which were about 100 feet long each, spread around Fiona. On top of each and every feather was a blazing flame, and from them streamed fire law. It was a beautiful sight to behold. The 3rd layer of the fire law. Zen thought. It was his estimate of the level of the fire law as he felt the intensity of it. The flames emitting from the genuine phoenix never ceased. They had the power to destroy everything, but at the same time, there was a vigorous life force hidden within them. Although this genuine phoenix was only at the 9th level, it made Zen feel a strong sense of being overpowered. This overwhelming force was much stronger than what Eddie emitted when they faced each other. Truly, a super legendary beast wasn't something to be trifled with. If Fiona's contractual beast had been a genuine dragon or an ice phoenix, the pressure on Zen would definitely have multiplied. The strength of this super legendary beast was probably comparable to that of a master at the 4th or 5th level of the life and death realm. Fiona was also someone who shouldn't be overlooked. Zen, with all his power and strength, did not have the confidence that he would be able to defeat them. Because Fiona had mainly cultivated the fire law and the time law, the contractual beast she had summoned through her bloodline was a fire phoenix. Fortunately, Zen's body was a fairy weapon, and it made him completely immune to fire. He was just worried that he didn't have a chance to increase the strength of his physical body. The higher the strength of the body, the more power of the dragon scales Zen would be able to use. It was a piece of cake for Zen to gather weapons to refine heavenly essence, but his physical body would not be able to withstand too much force. If he utilized too much of the dragon scale's power, his physical body would disintegrate. Fiona leaned backwards until she was finally sitting on the feathers of the great phoenix behind her. Then, she pointed at Zen with her finger and said, "Fiery Shine, Sun Flame Attack." Oh! The genuine phoenix named Fiery Shine suddenly raised its head and opened its mouth. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth began surging through its body and it gathered in its mouth. It could directly absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Zen thought, fully taken aback by what had happened. When the phoenix absorbed enough spiritual energy of heaven and earth, it locked its gaze on Zen, who was standing not too far away. Just as the genuine phoenix was about to launch its attack on Zen, Fiona suddenly appeared in front of it. She placed her hand on the phoenix's head and said something not audible to anyone but the two of them. It was as if she was whispering something to its ear. Then, they seemed to begin having a conversation. After a few moments of seemingly exchanging sentiments, the two came to an agreement. Fiona turned to Zen and said, "Thad, I've already proven my ability. You should understand that if the sun flame attack comes out from my genuine phoenix, you will definitely turn into ashes." Fiona shouted, her eyes locked with Zen's. She was not fooling around. "Before you do anything dumb, consider what's in front of you carefully. It's not too late to back off." Zen wondered what Fiona was trying to do. He didn't expect that she would order her contractual beast to stop attacking moments before it would. "What is happening?" he thought to himself, totally flustered. Fiona reminded Zen of the danger he was up against out of goodwill. Although her contractual beast was a young phoenix that was only at the 9th level, it was still a super legendary beast. Its power was not something that any ordinary fierce beast could even compare with. "I think that Thad should just admit defeat. To be able to force the royal family to use a super legendary beast, he has already caught much attention. With his current achievements, I'm sure the Harlan Divine Kingdom will reward him greatly. People like Thad wouldn't admit defeat easily. He would have already admitted defeat earlier if he were that kind of a cowardly man. Well, if he doesn't admit defeat, he'll just have to wait for death. If he wants to die that badly, no one will stop him. Our Princess Fiona has already given him chances to save his pathetic life." No one from the spectators believed that Zen would come out of this duel alive. The martial artists in the Divine Kingdom continent had a much wider range of knowledge and experience than those of the central region. Moreover, they also had a great deal of materials that were passed down from the upper world. They had a clear concept about the legendary beast and the super legendary beast. For instance, many people could estimate that the strength of this 9th level genuine phoenix in front of them was at least equivalent to that of a warrior at the life and death realm. Even martial artists at the 4th or 5th level of the life and death realm would not be a match for it. Zen was at the middle stage of the virtual tribulation realm, and even if he had extraordinary talents, what could he do to resist the genuine phoenix's force? It was sure that he would be burnt into ashes before he could even get close to the beast. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, Zen said calmly to the princess, "Thank you, but sorry." He said, "Thank you," to thank Fiona for giving him a chance to reconsider his decision, and he said, "Sorry," to tell her that he wouldn't admit defeat. Fiona revealed an expression full of regret. Summoning Fiery Shine was the decision made after careful thought. As a martial artist, she would never be able to escape a duel with another warrior. It was as necessary as eating was to humans. It was a rule that she could not break, no matter what. Since she couldn't avoid it, she could only accept it. Fiona finally decided to fight with Zen with her real strength. This battle with Zen made her realize what her mission and responsibilities were, and she understood more clearly what expectations her royal father had for her. Before, she would have chosen to surrender rather than summon Fiery Shine to kill Zen. But this time was different. She did not want to disappoint her royal father. After seeing that her warning had no effect on Zen, Fiona's eyes narrowed greatly. She turned back to her phoenix, and patted its head in a knowing manner. Fiery Shine had been waiting for a long time. After it received Fiona's orders, it opened its mouth, and a 10 feet wide beam of flame shot towards Zen. Chapter 797, Not Powerful Enough. An ordinary flame's heat dissipated in all directions. When one made a fire, it would often burn wild and unpredictable, and that made it weak. The genuine phoenix's sun flame attack was different because the blazing white flame bound and centered the heat to its core. This made it hotter, better, and far more accurate when launched. As the white fireball came flying towards him, Zen only had one thought in his mind. It seemed that his clothes were about to be burnt once again. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the flames immediately enveloped him and set his body aflame. Whew. Despite the horrifying sight of Zen burning alive, he was calm. There was no need to worry for his own safety given that he had an immunity to most flames, save of course for the black flame within the mysterious furnace. The genuine phoenix's sun flames looked terrifying but, in the end, they only contained the power of the first 3 layers of fire law which caused no harm to Zen. Now if the genuine phoenix had been a grown-up one, then he'd have a problem. A mature genuine phoenix was a 14th to 15th level super legendary beast comparable to a world lord or a supreme lord. Its size was also no joke given that it could grow to 1,000 miles long in length. Never mind its flames, Zen would be smashed into smithereens with just a lift of its claw. The temperature began to reach an uncomfortably hot range and Zen's body had turned as red as a hot iron poker. Zen looked at his body expectantly. They should appear any minute. One thing he hoped would come out of his willingness to burn himself was for his body to finally become a sacred weapon. With the combined power of several thousand dragon scales and forceful energy, his strength would be boosted to the point that he'd be able to defeat life and death realm warriors with ease once he entered the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm. However, this wasn't what happened. After the sun flame attack had continued for about a minute, nothing had come. Why didn't they appear? Burning himself in phoenix flames wasn't enough. Golden runes should have appeared in order for Zen to completely absorb the flames into his body. The flames aren't powerful enough, he quickly concluded. This was troublesome. It seemed not even flames from the first 3 layers of fire law would be enough. That phoenix shouldn't have just comprehended 3 layers of fire law, he thought to himself. The sun flames couldn't be the phoenix's most powerful attack. Ever since it appeared, Zen had already felt a mysterious power of fire law hidden within the beast. The power was much more complex than the power contained within these sun flames and Zen assumed that it should come from a higher layer of the fire law. He looked back at Fiona and an idea suddenly struck his head. He immediately turned against the sun flame's current and walked slowly towards her. Meanwhile, sparks from the sun flame attack had spread to the edges of the enchanted barrier that protected the spectators from the battle within the plaza. As the sun flame attack continued, the enchanted barrier gradually became unstable. It began to shake and there was a ripple in the enchanted barrier from the intensity and heat of the sun flames. This enchanted barrier was created by a Soul Sea Realm master, so it would look really bad if it was destroyed by a mere virtual tribulation realm warrior. The Soul Sea Realm master immediately waved his hand and an azure light immediately reinforced the enchanted barrier. Why didn't he just admit defeat? Why is he so stubborn? Is he truly willing to die for the sake of saving face? He will be burnt to ashes and lose his life because he did not cherish himself. That would have been fine, but he made our princess feel bad and that is his greatest sin. That's right, Thad's nothing more than vermin. Even his dead body would disgust anyone who sees it. Princess Fiona didn't want to kill him but he forced her to do it. He asked for this himself. He should be killed 1,000 times more for being like this. Fiona's sad face had driven the Wind Divine Kingdom warriors into a frenzy. Nobody made their princess sad. Zen was sure to have died in the flames but, as a consequence of his death, Fiona would be miserable. Their simple-minded brains could only show concern for their princess who indirectly cast the flame. And their hate for Zen who got burned to death because of his pride was obvious. Fiona tightly gripped the feathers of her genuine phoenix, fiery shine. She was indeed miserable, and her heart sank to the bottom. There had been no need to set him aflame, she knew that best of all. The world of martial artists was very cruel, but why couldn't the battle come to an end when one was defeated? Why did he choose to risk his life? Was it worth it? She knew that Zen was someone who had limitless potential and there was no doubt that he had a great future ahead of him. The fact that he died just like that and by her own hands nonetheless made her feel really sad and miserable. However, she also understood that she had a duty. She could not let her father down, after all. But, just as she was about to wallow in her misery even more, a head suddenly emerged from the flames. Stupid bird, Zen barked, shocking Fiona to the core. Work harder. Is that all you've got? Thad, you're fine. The sight of her unbothered opponent should have made her angry, but Fiona was a weird girl. She was actually quite relieved to see that he had survived. Even the audience was stunned. One warrior willingly set himself aflame. The other was glad that, despite setting her opponent aflame with the goal of killing him, he was still alive and kicking. The two were really just so strange. Zen's survival truly shocked many of the warriors. However, what surprised them even more was the way he had provoked the phoenix, a mighty, super-legendary beast. A super-legendary beast was surely something not to be trifled with. Was he, perhaps, a masochist? Meanwhile, Fiona had a stupidly beautiful smile on her fair face. They are fighting against each other. Honestly, I don't know at this point. The sight in front of them subverted some kind of concept or fundamental understanding they had of the world, but they couldn't point out specifically what it was. They just knew that it was weird. Fiery Shine was Fiona's contractual beast, but it had a mind of its own. It was a super-legendary beast and an extremely intelligent creature. The relationship between Fiona and the phoenix was similar to that of friends. Fiery Shine thought and acted separately and sometimes against Fiona's wishes, especially if it was angry. When enraged, not even Fiona would be able to control the phoenix's fury. And furious was exactly how the legendary beast felt after hearing Zen's rude provocation. How could a mere human trample over a super-legendary beast's dignity? Its eyes began to blaze a fiery red. Fiery Shine suddenly stopped spitting out sun flames, exposing Zen's body to the crowd. As expected, not even a trace of ash remained of his clothes. Ah! Fiona cried out, immediately averting her eyes at the scene. When he had turned against the current of the flames, Zen had walked over to Fiona and was actually quite close to the princess. Right now, his entire body was completely in full view of the pure, innocent girl. Some of the female martial artists in the square also averted their eyes, but there were a few who shamelessly ogled at him and enjoyed the view. Zen felt a bit embarrassed at his current state, but he had to have thick skin. Besides, there was another matter he should be concerned with. His provocation had worked and the phoenix was now preparing a whole new wave of attacks for him. Fiery Shine's feathers had spread out, informing everyone of its anger. It emitted a wave of heat that was so strong, not even Fiona could withstand it. What were you thinking? Why did you provoke it? Fiery Shine is truly angry now. She blamed Zen, head still turned to the side. He did not answer, given that he didn't really care about the fight with Fiona anymore. There was a more important matter that needed his attention. The heat wave was strong, but he still wasn't sure if it would be enough for him to advance. A fire ring suddenly appeared around the phoenix and Zen swore he felt some kind of special law power in that attack. His heart rejoiced. That's it. That's the attack I need. This was the mysterious law power he had sensed upon the phoenix's appearance. This power was entirely different from that in the sun flame attack earlier. The sight of the fire ring immediately alarmed Fiona. Her father, War King Wind, was also greatly concerned, to the point that he actually entered the arena through the enchanted barrier and forcefully pulled his daughter out. Chapter 798, Nirvana Flames. Without question, War King Wind had also specialized in fire attribute cultivation methods. His comprehension of the fire law was way deeper than Fiona's. Having been able to comprehend the third layer of the fire law, Fiona even owned a jade bracelet that was considered to be a semi-divine weapon. But this didn't mean that she was able to resist all kinds of flames, such as the phoenix's fire attacks. Truthfully, War King Wind was only testing Fiona. He absolutely didn't want her to suffer any damage, which was why he brought her away from the enchanted barrier. Even Turner himself wanted to bring Zen out of the enchanted barrier. Since he had chosen to protect him, he didn't want Zen to die in there. The problem was he found it hard to understand what Zen was saying. Previously, Zen was completely unharmed by the impact of the phoenix's sun flame attack. On his face, an expression of wanting more was plastered. What was the purpose of him infuriating the phoenix? Did he really hope for the phoenix to use its full strength? As he thought of it, Turner wasn't able to do anything at all. Just as the War King Wind had pulled Fiona out of the enchanted barrier, the phoenix curled its body and began to shrink. The fire ring around it also began to condense rapidly. Fiona stood outside the enchanted barrier as she stared at the contractual beast. That has provoked it. Now, it wants to use the Nirvana flames to burn him, she said. The phoenix was the symbol for immortality. The overall strength of this species was slightly weaker than that of the genuine dragon, but their vitality was much greater. Even the nine-head snake, a kind of legendary beast who had a super healing ability, did not compare to the genuine phoenix in that very aspect. The phoenixes, unlike all the other beasts, could be reborn forever. As long as fire existed, they could come back to life. Why did Zen feel a kind of power that surpassed the third layer of fire law when Fiona summoned Fiery Shine? What was that all about? Ultimately, it was because it had reincarnated within the flames. Before Fiona summoned fiery shine, it had already died once. Death wasn't a threat for the genuine phoenix. They could choose to die at any time and place, and they could also be reborn from any fire. During the process of coming back to life, phoenixes could release the nirvana flames. That was also the fourth layer of the fire law, also known as the flames of rebirth. Out of the 10 layers of the fire law, the first one was called the raging fire. The second layer was the ashes, while the third one was annihilation. The fourth layer was called the rebirth. After burning everything, it could bring forth a new life. That was how it got its name. As it gradually became smaller, the phoenix curled up its entire body and eventually turned into a round egg. The phoenix egg flickered with an orange-red luster that looked extremely smooth as if it were a giant gem. However, at that time, no one dared to approach it, as endless fire law began to surge out from it. That was the fourth layer of fire law. When the fire law had finally left the phoenix egg, it transformed into a golden-red flame storm that began to sweep throughout the surroundings. The Soul Sea Realm warrior who set up the enchanted barrier had a grave look on his face. The intensity of law power was vastly different in each layer. Even such a mighty warrior like him felt that the fourth layer of the fire law was a little tricky. If the phoenix managed to break through out of the enchanted barrier, then all perdition could break loose. Therefore, he was doing his utmost best to stabilize the enchanted barrier. The storm of flames embraced everything that it reached. The cube that had been formed by the enchanted barrier looked just like mad. In an instant, there was nothing else but flames that could be seen. Countless divine-level talents on the square were beginning to worry. Although the enchanted barrier was built by an almighty warrior at the Soul Sea Realm, what could happen if it broke? The presence of the storm of flames could likely affect a number of people. It was terrifying. Despite the fear that was brewing deep inside them, they all managed to hold it in. After all, they were a group of divine-level talents. They couldn't bring shame on the martial houses and divine kingdoms they represented. Under the sweep of the flaming storm, Zen's entire body was thoroughly red. Not long later, a golden rune appeared on his skin. I made it, Zen thought to himself, overjoyed. More golden runes began to appear throughout his body. They covered his hands, feet, face, and shoulders. The golden runes continued to rotate as they absorbed the flames. Soon, Zen started to look like a golden bronze sculpture. Even if the flames constantly enveloped him, Zen didn't suffer any injuries under the shroud of those golden runes. He felt extremely comfortable apart from the slight heat that he felt throughout his body. Slowly, Zen walked through the flaming storm and carefully approached the phoenix egg. The egg was still floating in the center of the enchanted barrier. The surface of the egg was constantly flashing with the fire law, as it activated an even stronger flame storm to engulf the entire area. Zen wasn't afraid in the slightest bit. Instead, he flew towards the storm of flames and extended his hand towards the phoenix egg. His fingers gently caressed the surface of the egg's hard shell. It's a bit hot to the touch, and I can definitely feel the life pulsating inside it. So this is what a phoenix egg is like. I wonder if dragon eggs are the same, he thought. Zen remembered how he still needed to help the Cyan dragon obtain the ancestral dragon egg after entering the Feather Holy Sea. Crack, crack, crack. Under Zen's touch, the surface of the phoenix egg started to crack rapidly. Then, a tiny phoenix shot out from the egg. The phoenix started to grow larger in such a quick speed as it circled around the egg. Following the two phoenix cries, the flame storm finally came to a stop. The phoenix looked at Zen with a confused gaze. Its flames were completely ineffective against him. The level 9 phoenix wasn't too old. Otherwise, it couldn't have been able to agree with Fiona and become her contractual beast. It could only use the third layer of the fire law, and as for the fourth layer, it needed to take the form of Nirvana to release it. In conclusion, Nirvana was its most powerful move. Originally, it wanted to use the Nirvana flames to incinerate that rude human. However, it now understood that this fellow did not seem to be afraid of fire. What was going on? The phoenix, which was still in its infancy, could not figure it out. At that moment, Zen smiled at the phoenix and said, "Thank you." Why is he thanking me? Wasn't he scolding me just now? The phoenix grew more confused. In spite of the fact that it was a super legendary beast, it was to maintain a respectful attitude towards Zen once it was established that he could actually defeat it in a duel. Thus, the phoenix let out a long cry and flew out of the enchanted barrier. "Remove the enchanted barrier and let fiery shine come out," Fiona ordered. Hearing her words, the warrior at the Soul Sea Realm immediately opened the enchanted barrier. After Fiery Shine left the enchanted barrier, it flew towards its master. After Fiona whispered a few words of consolation into its ears, the phoenix's mood seemed to ease up a little. Then, Fiona slowly approached the edge of the enchanted barrier and said to Zen, "I've lost this battle. You're stronger than I am. There is no denying it." When War King Wind took action and brought Fiona away from the enchanted barrier, she had already lost to him. Now that she had admitted defeat, Fiona was convinced from the bottom of her heart. She really didn't stand a chance against Zen. Knowing that she didn't have to face up against Zen anymore, Fiona suddenly calmed down. She was quite satisfied with how their battle turned out. Zen nodded and smiled to her. "You're not so bad yourself." I know," Fiona joked, but Zen knew she meant it. After all, she was a force. She knew how strong she was, and so did Zen. After making sure no one else was around, Fiona whispered to Zen, "Let me remind you, that little monster really is powerful. You have to be careful, or he'll kill you." In fact, Fiona could also tell that Zen's ability to defeat her was related to his special talent. It seemed that he wasn't afraid of the flames, but the little monster was a whole new different kind of evil. Chapter 799, The Arrogant Little Monster. After Zen's victory, all of the divine-level talents of the 4 divine kingdoms became speechless. Most of them became evidently listless and restless. They might have had the impulse to challenge Zen after his fight against Logan, but after what just happened, any warrior with even the littlest self-awareness would understand that they would never measure up to him, even if they tried, for the rest of their lives. Such a sentiment was understandable. Zen was able to survive, even under such terrifyingly powerful flames. He didn't obtain any kind of injury, and the only thing he lost was his clothes. Due to this, many people had started suspecting that Zen was not a human at all, or that his body was made up of some unknown substance. After all, Zen being unharmed was just totally illogical. Obviously, Zen didn't care one bit about how any of them felt. After the golden runes disappeared, Zen's body had already become a sacred weapon. More importantly, there was still a considerable amount of primordial energy in his body that he could use to further refine his already invincible body. Although going through body refinement was painful, he would happily bear it as doing so would bring tremendous benefits to him as a warrior. With his eyes closed, Zen began stretching his body. Slowly, he felt that he had entered a new level. A hint of joy appeared on his face before he opened his eyes and gazed at Randy, Turner and the others on the platform. Joy overflowing on his face, Randy gave Zen a thumbs up. Zen nodded slightly and looked around, asking in a clear voice, "Who else wants to challenge me?" The Wind Divine Kingdom had failed. The next step was for the Starfield Divine Kingdom or the York Divine Kingdom to send their best warriors to challenge him. With the current situation, the most unhappy ones were the warriors from the Starfield Divine Kingdom. Ever since the beginning, they had never won a match. Although the Wind Divine Kingdom had lost, War King Wind had only sent one warrior to fight Zen, and that was Fiona. Despite the fact that Fiona had lost, the strength she displayed was already enough to prove her worth. In the younger generation of the 4 divine kingdoms, there weren't many people who would dare say that they were match for her. After Zen defeated Logan and Fiona, the warriors that were ranked in the first tier of their own martial houses didn't dare come up. Even with their current level of strength, they knew that they would be instantly defeated by Zen. They would only bring shame to themselves and their martial houses. Actually, the crown princes of the 4 divine kingdoms had the opportunity to challenge and defeat Zen. The thing was, no one knew if any of them would take that step forward. Just as the imperial members of the Starfield Divine Kingdom were considering this, someone had already stepped out. This person was none other than that little monster from the 9 Furnace Martial House. There were so many top warriors within the York Divine Kingdom, including some from the 9 Furnace Martial House. Their strength was not necessarily inferior to Logan's, but only the little monster dared to come forward. He bent his waist and suddenly jumped up. His entire body flipped in the air and instantly disappeared into the enchanted barrier. His gaze revealed an intense interest in Zen. It's finally the little monster's turn to fight. I wonder if that brutal fellow will receive a lesson this time. That little monster being taught a lesson. You know, I want to see that too, but have you ever seen him lose before? No, never. Even the warriors from the 9 Furnace Martial House didn't like the little monster. Even the 9 Furnace Martial House wouldn't be willing to bring the little monster here, but they had to use his power to gain more benefits in the Feather Holy See. Well, the truth was that the York Divine Kingdom didn't plan to send out the little monster to fight others at all. In the past, when they had a competition before the Feather Holy See was to be opened, the little monster had lain on the ground and slept soundly. The battles between warriors had nothing to do with him. This time, however, Marine personally summoned the little monster to deal with Zen. At the sight of what was happening, an extremely complicated expression colored Marine's face. She did not know whether she had done the right thing or not. Zen's eyebrows furrowed the moment he saw the little monster approach. He hated the kind of gaze he was giving him. But after Fiona's reminder, his vigilance heightened. While Fiona's strength was already extremely astonishing, she was still very afraid of the little monster. This fellow's strength definitely could not be underestimated. But Zen understood that the reason of Fiona's fear of the little monster was not solely because of his strength, it was also because his personality. The moment the little monster landed in the fighting area, he smacked his lips and stared at Zen slyly. "Can I challenge you?" he asked, his eyes locked on Zen. Zen replied nonchalantly, "Since you're already standing here, I don't think there's any other choice left but that. Why do you still ask?" The little monster's long neck shrunk and his smile became more menacing. He replied, "If you lose, can I kill you?" The little monster was starting to talk so much nonsense that Zen could only narrow his eyes in annoyance. In a cold tone, he replied, "According to the rules, you're not allowed." "That's too bad," the little monster said, his tone mocking. "I don't know how to fight, and I only know how to kill. What should I do?" The little monster stared at Zen with his unblinking black eyes as he laughed in a sinister way. He was ready to kill. With that, Zen only smiled and said, "Well, as you know, there's no absolute guarantee in a fight. I think we should start." Trash talking was not something he was interested in. Also, he was too lazy to waste his breath on the little monster. "All right then," the little monster replied, twisting his mouth into a wide, malicious smile. His teeth were suddenly exposed and they didn't look like human teeth at all. They were crisscrossed and exceptionally sharp, as if they were the teeth of some wild beast. Without any warning, he rushed towards Zen. Not one bone in Zen like the little monster. His face was full of disgust as he watched him running towards him. Truly, he already despised the little monster from the bottom of his heart despite only meeting him a few minutes ago. Despite the surge of such emotion in him, Zen couldn't understand why he had such emotion towards his new opponent. Whoosh! The little monster suddenly leapt high into the air. His strange smile was still plastered on his face as he descended on Zen, his hands out. Zen's figure flashed, passing through space in the blink of an eye, avoiding the little monster's grasp. However, he started feeling baffled by what was happening. Would the little monster really fight him head-on? After the little monster went up on stage, he didn't take out a weapon or use any life vitality. He was only relying on his bare hands to attack Zen. He even gave up on flying and just ran on the enchanted barrier. Zen, whose body was now a sacred weapon, was quite confident. If the little monster wanted to engage in a close combat with him, he would happily oblige. It was just that he didn't know what was on the little monster's mind, so he chose to stay alert. The little monster missed with his attack and fell back onto the enchanted barrier. He then clucked his tongue and said, "Your strength and talent are not bad, but you are too timid." Hearing his provocation, Zen became even more vigilant. "What does this guy mean? Does he really intend to fight me with his physical body?" he thought. "There's no need to think too much about it." The little monster grinned and said, "Against you, I don't even need to use my life vitality. I will just use my physical strength." After the little monster spoke, the onlookers began to discuss among themselves. They were well aware that the little monster was very powerful. Strictly speaking, although he was a warrior at the virtual tribulation realm, he was not on the same level as these divine-level talents. However, everyone had clearly seen the power that Zen had. He was so formidable that even the genuine phoenix could do nothing to him. Wasn't it a bit too much for the little monster to say such a thing? At the little monster's words, a strange smile suddenly appeared on Zen's face. "You don't seem to be a body refiner and don't have any forceful energy." "You're right. To deal with you, I do not need the forceful energy," the little monster said again. "Okay." Instantly, Zen soared, quickly reaching the peak of the enchanted barrier. When warriors at the virtual tribulation realm fought against each other, their battle space was always too small. Therefore, the Soul Sea Realm Master had set up a large enchanted barrier. After reaching the peak, Zen looked down on the little monster below. He then asked with a cunning smile, "If that's the case, how do you plan on fighting me?" The little monster's expression suddenly froze. Even without life vitality, the explosive strength of the little monster's body was still very strong. The problem was Zen had pulled away from him, and the little monster couldn't even reach him. If it was another warrior who wanted to compete with him in terms of physical strength, Zen would certainly agree to such a request. Whether it was forceful energy, life vitality, or physical strength, Zen was not afraid of it at all. However, he could not bear to watch the little monster act so arrogantly in front of everyone. There were plenty of people who disliked the little monster. Even though many divine-level talents were able to break through their bottlenecks and obtain great benefits by sparring with him, the little monster was not someone whom many people liked. Well, how many people would like a guy who not only looked like a monster, but also had a cruel and erratic temperament? Seeing that the little monster was at a loss as to what to reply to Zen's words, everyone took the opportunity to laugh. It was this laughter that made the little monster embarrassed and angry beyond measure. Chapter 800, Flexible. The little monster had just said that he would not use his life vitality to fight Zen. He intended to only use his physical strength. However, without his life vitality, he would not be able to fly. Since Zen was already at the top of the enchanted barrier, how would he be able to attack him? Since he had already boasted about how he would not need to use his life vitality to fight Zen, he couldn't break his own words. With that, he started to dart towards the edge of the enchanted barrier. Run. With his long hands and legs, the little monster looked bizarre. Once he started moving, though, every part of his body seemed to be playing a huge part in what he was trying to achieve, giving him incredible advantage. He started looking streamlined, a warrior with a goal. After running the whole distance of the fighting area within only a few seconds, he came upon the enchanted barrier. Without any hesitation, he started scaling it. When he was halfway to the top, he suddenly did an athletic somersault. With a powerful push against the enchanted barrier, he was finally heading towards the direction where Zen was standing. When Zen saw that the little monster had managed to charge at him without using his life vitality, his lips broke out in a sardonic grin. A very convenient skill a martial artist had was flying by using his life vitality, so that he could change positions at will. The fact that the little monster had managed to approach Zen just by merely sprinting and taking a giant leap in the air amazed and disgusted Zen at the same time. Suddenly, Zen's figure vanished into thin air and reappeared behind the little monster, his arms outstretched as if he was trying to reach behind his opponent. "I can't believe you are this naive," he shouted, as he directed a punch towards the little monster's back. He just couldn't help but sneer at him. This punch contained the power of 300 dragon scales. When this power erupted, the little monster flew away like a ball that had been hit by a bat. The little monster crashed towards the other side of the arena and landed face first on the bottom of the enchanted barrier. Although Zen was successful in staging his attack, he felt that something was wrong. When his fist came into contact with the little monster's body, he felt that it was very soft. It was as if the little monster didn't have any bones. Even if Zen had utilized the power of 300 dragon scales in his strike, the little monster didn't seem to be injured at all. Silence befell the arena as the little monster lay on the bottom of the enchanted barrier motionlessly. After a few moments, however, he started stirring and slowly got up. When he was finally standing up, he stared at Zen with his black eyes, which were much like that of a wild beast in the forest, a vicious smile on his face. "You really won't use your life vitality, huh?" Zen asked flatly, clasping his hands behind his back. "As I told you, I don't need to," the little monster replied, a mocking sneer plastered on his lips. "You are not the kind of opponent that would push me to go all out." Despite the aggressive provocation from the little monster, Zen made sure that he remained calm and collected. Taking a deep breath, he said to his opponent who was standing on the ground, "If you really enjoy being beat up, then let's continue." The little monster was indeed incredibly vile and condescending, but he knew that his physical strength wouldn't be enough to stage a fight against Zen. He also knew full well that Zen was proficient in space law. Now, if he didn't use his life vitality to fly, he wouldn't be able to touch even the hem of Zen's clothing. Whoosh! Once again, the little monster broke out into a run. This time, however, he did not climb the edge of the enchanted barrier. Instead, he directly leapt up straight towards Zen. It was undeniable that this little monster's physical power was extremely strong. It was impossible, even for a life and death realm master to be able to possess such a powerful body that would let him or her do such stunts. A warrior at the late stage of the virtual tribulation realm just wouldn't compare. However, it didn't matter how good he was at jumping or how fast his speed was, he still wouldn't be able to catch Zen. The moment the little monster came face to face with Zen, Zen took a step forward, traversed through space, and once again showed up behind the little monster. Then he threw another punch. This time, Zen activated the power of 500 dragon scales on top of his own strength. The power that this strike created was extremely terrifying. The little monster leapt higher into the air, but since he couldn't find a place where he could push himself to gain momentum, it became impossible for him to dodge Zen's fist. Bam! A powerful punch once again landed on the little monster's back, again sending him crashing down like a shooting star. And just like the first time around, Zen still failed to hurt him. Seeing this, Zen clenched his fists, narrowed his eyes, and gritted his teeth. His opponent's ability to withstand powerful blows was on par with that of his own body. Despite that, Zen and the little monster were fundamentally different in their natures. Zen had transformed his body into a magic weapon, and his body itself was now virtually invincible. After being refined by the Nirvana flames, he now had the physique that could be considered as a sacred weapon, rendering him insusceptible to injuries and attacks. The body of the little monster, however, was on the opposite extreme side of the scale. His body seemed very soft, as if he had no bones. That made any attack towards him seem like an attack on a sponge. Realizing this, Zen understood that it would be hard for him to hurt his opponent. "Shall we continue?" Zen once again asked nonchalantly. The little monster once again got up on his feet. After spitting on the ground, he looked up at Zen. There was a sinister smile contorting his lips. He did not say anything, and instead, once again leapt upwards towards Zen. Once again, Zen appeared behind the little monster. Since the power of 500 dragon scales was not enough to hurt him, he planned to directly activate the power of 800 dragon scales. He hoped that would be enough. However, just as Zen was about to attack, the little monster's hand suddenly twisted and came towards him. The whole scene was very confusing, but Zen quickly understood what was happening. The little monster's arm just twisted backwards to come for him. This action would be impossible for a human to complete. It was just like trying to turn one's neck 360 degrees. A normal person would suffer from broken bones if he or she attempted to do what this little monster had done. It was now clear that the little monster's body was extremely flexible. While contemplating this fact, Zen wasn't able to dodge the oncoming arm. It caught his arm, and its grip immediately tightened. Just like a rope, the arm coiled itself around Zen's arm, effectively tying him down. "Ha ha," the little monster chuckled, happiness evident on his face. "As I have told you, I don't need to use my life vitality just to deal with you." His vicious grin widened. Suddenly, a huge force flowed through his arm, and he sent Zen flying towards the ground. Bam! Taken by surprise, Zen wasn't able to ready himself for the attack. Because of that, he had no choice but to brace himself for the impact. Within a fraction of a second, he crashed into the bottom of the enchanted barrier. However, the little monster's attack was not over. His arm was still tightly wrapped around Zen's body. It had stretched out to a length of over 80 feet. "This guy is really a monster," Zen thought to himself as he lay on the bottom of the enchanted barrier. Despite being entangled, he managed to prop himself up and give the little monster a good glare. Not wasting any time, the little monster's arm began to deform again, but now, the original 80 feet long arm was shrinking. With that, the little monster was able to close the distance between the two of them quickly, while his other fist was coming towards Zen's head like a raging meteor. Despite his body being so soft, the power that had erupted from inside him was astonishing, and to think that he still hadn't used his life vitality. Right at this critical moment, Zen stopped thinking. He tilted his head and the little monster's fist had missed its target. The entire enchanted barrier started to shake under the little monster's enormous power. "These two fellows are both monsters," Marine, the holy maiden, mumbled as she watched the battle that was happening in the enchanted barrier. Her face was colored with fear, anger, and amusement. When she first asked this little monster to fight for her, she felt that Zen was destined to suffer a lot. In the 4 divine kingdoms where there were countless divine-level talents, the reason that this little monster stood out as a freak in the eyes of every other person was not because of his special talent, but because of his incomparable strength. He seemed to be a mutant among humans. When they first discovered the little monster, he was living in the forest where the warriors of 9 Furnace Martial House practiced. The practice was to enter the 7 Water Forest, which was to the north of the York Divine Kingdom. That forest wasn't particularly dangerous, and the strongest fierce beasts there were only at the 3rd or 4th level. Thus, the 9 Furnace Martial House would usually organize tens of thousands of warriors at the nature level to enter into the forest to practice. It was during that time that they encountered this little monster. When they came upon him, he didn't have a name, and no one knew where he came from. He didn't even know human language. He lived the same way as a fierce beast would, eating raw meat, especially brains. Several hundreds of people from the 9-furnace Marshall house who entered the 7-water forest were killed by the little monster alone. Everyone died in a different way, but one thing was in common: all of their heads had been smashed and their brains were sucked out clean. This news quickly spread throughout the 9-furnace Marshall house's senior leaders. It shook them up. Because of that, they decided to send over 1,000 martial artists at the internal elixir realm into the 7-water forest to investigate. It was only then did they finally discover the little monster. They had to chase after him for more than 10 days before they were able to capture him. That year, the little monster was 7 years old, and he only had the strength at the marrow refining level. No one had taught him any martial skills, and all of his cultivation had been achieved through his own comprehension. After the 9-furnace Marshall house captured him, they decided to spare his life. Even though he was dangerous, he only attacked ordinary nature creatures. The senior leaders of the 9-furnace Marshall house decided to keep him in order to unravel the secrets of his incredible body. They never expected that they would find out so much about the little monster's body. First and foremost, his bones seemed to be extremely soft and flexible. Once, someone cut off one of his arms as an experiment. A few days later, he grew another.